It is Tuesday, 8/22/23. George Brauchler here in the saddle on the George Show 710 KNUS. Once again, the pictogram provided to us by the good folks at Denver 7 has changed without really any explanation or, frankly, mitigation. Today, another big, bright, unobstructed view of a big ball that I presume to be the sun because it has little sticks shooting out of it that are of the same color. Remember, yesterday, that was only true for yesterday, 99 degrees yesterday. Today, it's sunny and hot. We were promised thunderbolts at some point in clouds. That's not going to happen now until tomorrow when we'll have clouds, mostly sunny, but 93 degrees. Thursday, few PM storms, 88 degrees. Friday, we drop down to 78 degrees, storms likely. Saturday, all it is looks to be a crying cloud of some kind. I presume that's showers and cooler. Folks, I just got distracted as I was talking to you because out of the corner of my eye, we've got Fox News up here. I caught a picture of a shirtless Vivek Ramaswamy playing tennis. I was reminded why I'm straight, but it was also concerning that there are any politicians running around out there. And this is true, by the way, for Kennedy, doing the shirtless, wearing jeans-clad, shirtless beach push-ups. Hard pass. Please, just keep your freaking clothes on. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Unless it's Chris Christie. I want to see it.
Or unless we are going to, take our debates in more of a pageant and have some sort of a talent
like that
portion. Yeah, of the contest. Then maybe, you have a debate for a while, and then you take like a 10-minute break, and they come out and they have some sort of a talent. And, it could be, tennis, as Vivek was doing. Maybe it could be something like you can play the guitar or pole dancing. I'm just saying.
In a very,
ideas.
Listen, it's all good until you get to Nikki Haley. Then it becomes this sort of trope. But I do like the idea of Martha McCallum singing out there like, here he comes,
yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? And there's again, Chris Christie in some sort of a banana hammock.
Exactly. and he's the one doing the pole dancing. He's the guy.
That's a pole that looks a lot like an oil rig pipe.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just like one of those things.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of a talent too, and they just walk around and they do the microphone thing. And Mr. New Jersey, tell us what you do. I'm a hula hooper.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just wears it as a belt.
Yes, exactly.
It just goes on about his business.
Yeah.
There's no reason to make fun of someone based on their girth, and yet I did.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's good.
Listen, usually this is the segment where we talk about yesterday. It became an extension of Grievance Monday.
Oh, really? Yeah, what happened? You share.
Verizon sucks. I can't overemphasize that revelation to me. Verizon sucks. So I've told I could go on for an hour, which would be 1/3 of the time I spent on the phone with them.
Oh, no. Oh, it was over the SIM card thing?
SIM card thing. So Amanda trapped in the United Arab Emirates with a phone she purchased a couple weeks ago. Turns out they can't unlock the SIM phone. They refuse to. It's not cannot. There's no FCC rule. There's no FTC rule. There's no cellular gods rule. They won't unlock the SIM card for 60 days due to the potential for fraud. And so when I'm talking to somebody from that part of the country, because that's where all customer service gets routed through, it's either Pakistan or India or something like that. The people that are so very, very sorry. I'm so very sorry. I'll do everything I can to fix this. I'm so very sorry.
Yeah, except the thing I need you to do.
Exactly. Except the thing I need you to do. The guy says, well, it's not eligible to be unlocked until October the 7th. I said, I understand your rules, man. I've heard them now 8 times on the phone.
Yeah.
But that doesn't fix a problem for a 20-year-old girl who's stuck in the Middle East, which, in case you haven't been keeping up, not a place favorable to girls.
Yeah.
And I said, it would be cool if when people bought a phone, you guys might put up a little placard by the door that just says, don't leave the country with this for 2 months because it won't work.
Yeah.
And he said, well, sir, they put it in the disclaimers and all of that. I said, hang on, my man. Have you ever read the legal disclosures and disclaimers of your own product?
Yeah.
Dead silence. I said, of course you haven't, because if everybody that bought a Verizon phone did, only half of them would be sold because the rest of the people would still be reading them.
Exactly.
I said, if it's that big a deal, maybe you just, hey, just in case you're thinking of leaving the country, this phone is a paperweight for you for 2 months. Just wanted to give you a heads up there. No, nothing like that. So when I talked to them on Saturday for a couple hours, they said, oh, we'll get this fixed. I'm so very sorry. And they sent a ticket, which apparently has some weight to whoever the people are. I hear nothing. Amanda's texting me during the show, yesterday, and it's like, what's going on? Have you received an email? No email, no nothing. So I call back, get on the phone line again. A lot of AI stuff, and it turns out they don't train the AI customer service to recognize profanity.
Oh,
because when I say, put me on the effing phone with a customer service person, they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your request. Is it about activating a new device? I'm like, I mean, it just makes you crazy. Like the AI thing. I think the plan for AI is they're going to get us to kill ourselves. You know what I mean? They're just going to, they're going to get us to the point where we take our own lives, and then they'll have the planet, them and the roaches.
Yes, that's it.
And so finally get a hold of them on the phone a long time. And they come back and reveal, well, it was sent to the fraud department, but they denied the request to override. And I said, hey, couple quick questions come to mind. One, why? And two, when was someone going to tell us? I mean, was this just sort of a thing? It's like, shh, it's a secret. Only Verizon knows. Unless they ask you, don't tell them the resolution to this very important thing for them. So they're like, I don't know why no one told you. And so they're like, one person, and everybody that's so certain they know how the system works turns out to suck. So one guy's like, well, we can't do this, or this must go to the fraud department. Here's the fraud department number. I said, that number ends in 00s. Am I going to reach a human being, or is this going to be another, trip through AI hell?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, sir. They're open till 9 p.m. Central Time. They'll get your. And by the way, in no way am I trying to disparage by my pretend accent the person. I'm just trying to distinguish their voice from mine. Same thing I've done with Judge. That's all.
That's fine.
And so I call the fraud department. I get some guy, slow talking Southern guy. Well, let me see what I can get done. And he comes back. I got my supervisor on. I'm going to put you on hold for a little bit more. We're going to get to it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way around it. Great. I'm on hold. It's now 30 minutes. I've taken Graham to the tunnels, the chaos tunnels. I was going to pitch him some balls, but I'm like, dude, you're just going to have to hit him off the tee. I need to do this. Just disconnects. Phone just hangs up. Click. And I'm like, so I call back in, go through the process, wait. And now I get some woman who's just so cocksure. She's like, oh, we don't do that. I'm like, it's funny because the Southern sounding dude, who I hope is in the same country, if not the same building as you, he seemed quite certain they could do something. No, this is definitely not it. You've got to go to customer service. We don't have the ability.
I've already been to customer service.
Yeah. So a lot of that, right? I'm raising my voice, and it's a good thing we're at Club Chaos, where there's a lot of sounds of kids hitting baseballs and machines going and stuff like that. Cause only Graham knows that daddy is losing his mind.
Yes. That's good.
And finally, I get to another customer service person. I'm back in Southeast Asia. The other two had been Americans, completely helpless, just absolute doorknobs. And now I've got this other guy who starts talking to me again about eligibility. And I'm like, buddy, do you guys ever share notes with each other?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
This is when I told him information he did not like. This is when I told him all that. Nope. We restart the conversation, and he says, well, the only way to do it is to submit a ticket. And I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus, buddy. We did the ticket thing on Saturday, man. He said, well, encourage your daughter to continue to use the Wi-Fi. I said, I will. And for every moment she's trapped inside a building with Wi-Fi she can access, it'll be great.
Yeah.
But what happens when she goes outside? No answer. And he's like, well, sir, she had the disclaimer. I said, don't go down that road with me, man. I said, we're paying now for a service we can't actually access. I said, can you put me on the phone with a human being? And he's like, well, we must submit the ticket. I said, does the ticket go to a computer or to a person? And he goes, well, sir, the procedure. And now I'm just full on, prosecutor mode. I'm like, buddy, I asked you a pretty simple question.
Yeah.
Does it go to a human being? And he goes, yes. And I said, can we just hijack the entire process, do something crazy, like just call that human being?
Yeah.
He says, well, these people in the fraud department, you cannot call them. I'm like, they have no phones in their building.
No phones,
No phones?
No phones at all.
Like, these are people just trapped, I presume, in a windowless building, waiting for some electronic ticket to show up.
They're like some sub basement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like, and they're not allowed.
phone lines down there.
In fact, they don't even have operating eyes anymore.
No,
They've been in
not
the
at all.
dark
Yes.
so long that they're like those creatures at 50,000
Yes,
leagues below
exactly.
the sea. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep.
And he's like, this is the only way. I said, listen, it's clear to me, one, you're not Mr. Verizon, and I don't hold you accountable for the crappy policies of your company, but you also have no authority to make a difference here. Can we get a supervisor? And he says, yes, I'd be happy to transfer you to a supervisor who will tell you that we must submit a ticket. And I said, hang on, are you telling me your supervisor has no extra authority that you have? And he goes, nope. I said, that's not a supervisor.
Not at all.
That's a colleague, man.
Yeah,
that's like
that
a
is.
coworker. That's not a supervisor.
Oh,
and he's like, well,
geez.
sir, I could try. I said, listen, you transfer me. I'm going to be stuck in this Boolean hell loop of AI garbage. I said, let's just do the stupid ticket. I'm on the phone 10 minutes listening to this guy in total silence. I think entering the ticket every once in a while, I'm like, hello. And he's like, yes, sir, please bear with me. I'm like, is it a novel?
Yeah.
I mean, is it like, dear people who don't have phones that I've never met and can't communicate with other than through this device? I'm speaking with a very angry American father who is very upset with
who's threatened bodily injury to me several times so far. Yes.
And then, of course, we get to that, the ultimate end of the call. I don't think they're allowed to hang up on you. I just think I think you have to terminate the call. And so now it's this chicken game of dead silence.
Oh, good.
You know, where he's like, well, I've submitted it. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and then he's like, so is there anything else I can help you with? I'm like, you haven't helped me so far.
Yeah.
So what's left, man? What else? Well, that is all I can do. So I'm like, so I know he's just, please hang up on me, angry American man. I go, so that's all? He goes, yes, sir. So this is probably the end of the call. I'm like, is someone going to get back to me with either a denial or, hey, we figured out a way to press a button and turn the phone on?
Yeah.
I believe they will. I'm like, that sounds like optimism, not a commitment.
Yeah.
And then, you know, by the end, Graham is just like, hey, any good news? I'm like, no, there's no good news dealing with the idiots at Verizon. I mean, these people suck rocks, man. They are just dreadful. The bureaucracy is reminiscent. And even the government isn't this bad. And the government is horrible.
Oh, yeah.
But Verizon just blows.
Got a question for you. How many of your 6 members of the family are on Verizon? Is it all of you?
It's all 6.
Okay. This may, I'm not sure it can help, but it may grease the skids a little bit more, is if you get back to customer service, say, can you review my account, please? Can you look and see how long I have been a customer? And then they look. Say, can you also tell me how many current phones I have? And look and say, what I'm telling you is this. I'm asking you to do this. I know it's possible. I know it's against your rules, but because I've been a longtime customer, this is obviously not fraud, and I'm asking for help for my daughter in the Middle East because of this circumstance. And I have found another company that can do this. Now, I am happy to take my business with that other company in the future. You know, based on my history, I'm not jumping. I'm going to be with them for another 2 decades, and it's 6 lines.
It is 2 decades. You're right. It's been 20 years.
Yes. So what I'll say is, do you want to have to explain to your supervisor and his supervisor?
Do they care?
Yes, they do, because customer loss is a huge deal.
Okay.
And the idea that you are a 2-decade customer and have 6 lines does provide a little bit of leverage, only because the idea is the last thing they want to do is if you go and you try to cancel your lines, they send you to a special department. And that department is entirely motivated by trying to keep
that's
you
what I
as
should
a
have said
customer.
is, hey, I want to cancel your crappy lines.
So what you need to do is that's what you need to threaten and see if that works. See if that just provides enough of a lever to make them do something and say, I am happy to cancel my service and go with your competitor. And I will tell everybody that I know why I now have a new phone and a new service, because I've been there, and say, I'm not jumping. You know that I'm not here 3 months and going to the next real. I am a loyal customer for 20 years.
I've paid you jillions
and
of
I
dollars.
have, and again, the 6 lines is a big deal to them because that is a large package buy. So try that and say, this is where I am.
I should do that.
Yeah, and just say,
Let's see what happens today.
Yeah, and don't tell them who it is. Just say, I have found another major carrier that can do this for me, and they've guaranteed they can do this for me in 48 hours.
And it has the letter T in it.
Yes, exactly.
That's all of them.
Yeah,
right.
And, yep, exactly.
Mint.
Yeah, exactly.
Sprint.
Yep. And just tell them,
AT&T.
yeah,
T-Mobile.
Just say, I found another carrier. They're willing to do this, and I can get coverage within 48 hours. I would like to stay with you because it's a pain in the butt for me to change. But this is more of a problem.
Yeah, here's a texter agreeing with you. Always tell whomever you want to speak with, you want to talk to the loyalty department, tell them you're leaving. And then another texter, I have so many Verizon nightmare stories. And that's not even to include the fact that they have simply boycotted coverage in Parker or Douglas County, as far as I know. It's heartbreaking. I did play the loyalty card, but not from that economic standpoint. It was much more of a, dude, I've been with y'all 20 years. Doesn't that count for something?
Yeah.
I said, and in terms of fraud, man, would somebody call up this many times, this irate repeatedly over this issue, if all they're trying to do is punk you out of a friggin' phone?
Yeah. This couple $100. Yeah. I used to do that. No, we have cut the cord. But when we had Comcast, I would about every 9 months to a year and a half would call them because our bill was higher than my in-laws' bill across town. They're over near Green Mountain and we're on this side of town. And I would call them and say, yeah, I need to cancel my service. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, it's obvious that it is more difficult for you to just, to spend and shoot the cable information down my line than it is to my in-laws' line across town. For some reason, they have easier lines, or it's economically better for you. So my bill's too much. So I'm going to have to cancel. No, sir, it isn't. And then they'd ask me how much the other, my in-laws were paying. And I'm like, they're paying this. And they're like, oh, well, here, I will adjust it. And for the next 9 months, that's the price you'll get.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over and over again until we finally got just tired of doing it. So we cut the cord and we're saving like literally 65% of what we were spending.
Oh, buddy, that's over the course of a year, too. That's real money.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, that's supersized money. Alexa texted in Patriot Mobile, which is an option, also has a T in it. So there's something.
That is true. And then here's the weird thing with Patriot Mobile, though, is that they talk about the idea that you're gonna spend your money with Patriot Mobile and they're not gonna support the liberal causes and the stuff that Verizon and T-Mobile and stuff do. Patriot Mobile does because they have to buy carrier space on the existing platforms. They do not have their own cell towers, so they have to buy bandwidth.
Is this what Mint
on Verizon?
Does too?
Yeah. So they have to buy it. Now, again, they're giving it to you as a discount. Now, Patriot does give you a discount. I'm not throwing rocks at them as far as price. But the idea that your money is not going to Verizon or AT&T and T-Mobile is a lie.
But it is being washed through the Patriot contract.
Exactly. Okay. Patriot still has to pay those companies. And those companies are still going to spend your money on the liberal stuff you don't want to. It's a great marketing scheme, and their price is good. And their quality is good because they're buying existing cell tower bandwidth. But just remember, when you're hearing that advertising, not so much.
Here's another one, Xfinity Mobile, which has also a T in it. And by the way, if you're an Xfinity customer and you're not anymore, my God, they're pushing the hell out of that mobile stuff. Man.
Oh, yeah.
Man, they are on you for the mobile.
Yeah, it's funny. If you go to the Xfinity website, they no longer direct you towards cable. They direct you to internet and mobile. That shows you where their bill is.
Eric Manning has texted
in. Eric.
Try Mark Levin's Pure Talk. That's another one that has a T in it as well.
It does.
Switch to consumer cellular, like did Ben with the now 12-year never had a problem.
Yeah, some of those
apparently just voice to text.
Yeah,
they will fix your problem today. Switch to consumer cellular. That doesn't have a T in it though.
No, but don't tell them what one it is. Just I found another carrier, and just I can go. I
got to come up with something like that. Another texter said they tried that, Billy, and it didn't work for them. And now I think it could work. I'm going to try the
The thing is, if it doesn't work, you're no worse off than you are now.
Yeah,
it can't hurt anything.
I tweeted out, and I'm going to continue to tweet out. Verizon sucks, man. They don't care. They are awful. And what I can't really resolve in my mind whether this is the product of incompetence mixed with apathy or straight up we hate people. It's hard to tell because it feels the same. If they just simply answered the phone and said, we don't care what your problem is, I'd be in the exact same spot I'm in right now, but I would have back the other 3 hours yesterday and the other 2+ hours on Saturday. So I guess I'd rather have the 5.5 hours of waking time I could have spent hanging out with the kids or working rather than having gone through all of that to get to the result of we simply don't care what your problem is. Oh, and now someone has texted in, Xfinity uses Verizon. God, they suck. I mean, they just truly suck. Listen, as far as yesterday goes too, and I was hoping to get a little something from Billy, but maybe this is a good opportunity to break away. I did get interviewed again by our friends over at KDVR on something, and maybe do we save that thing, man? The little
The what? Who? Where?
the McLean TV thing? Because
yeah, we got that.
Okay, we could play that now, but I also wanted to see.
What's in the
Did you
news?
have to work last night and do any sort of trivia, naked pole dancing?
No, not at all. Oh, and caller had just said, try a sat phone. Now they can be a little bit pricey, not as pricey as they used to be.
Do they look like the ones, when you watch the special forces in the Middle East and they have the giant freaking foam antenna or whatever?
No,
I don't want that.
Not anymore. Yeah, not anymore, but they can be pricey in the low four figures is basically what you're looking at.
What?
But it can be sent to.
As long as there's a decimal after one of those figures, we're in.
Yeah, no, but they can be, but you could get it shipped to like American Embassy or something like that, and they would be able to hook up Amanda with that is what the suggestion was. But the person did say, though, it can be pricey.
I like the offer. I appreciate that. I just don't understand how this company. I asked and this is the problem. This is customer service George, who's not a good person, by the way. He uses his skills for what I think are good, but most
not
other
always
people
using his inside voice.
No, and I think a lot of people that would listen in on the conversation from my end would think, thank you, God, that I'm not the person on the other end of that phone. I think that's true. Yeah. But honestly, at one point I asked this guy, how is it Verizon has existed this long with this kind of an approach?
Yeah.
And he doesn't have an answer. That's not on his computer screen.
Yeah.
But I did ask while you were on the phone, I said, I'd rather have the 5.5 hours of my life back and just have a human being get on the phone and say, we don't care. Whatever you're calling about, we don't care. Yeah. Because I'd be in the exact same position I'm in right now, but I'd have more free time.
Yeah, exactly. You could call in Verizon. Hello, welcome to Verizon customer service. We don't care. Click.
Yeah. Here's a whole bunch of numbers. They're all going to tell you the same thing.
Yes.
We don't care.
Yeah, we don't care.
Yeah. Just keep the checks coming in, keep paying. Otherwise we don't care. And then just hang up and you'd be like, that's so super frustrating. But now I've got 5.5 hours left to hang out with Jeff or Graham. I mean, we could drive up and back from Fort Collins and have lunch with Trey all in the period of time that I spent on the phone over 2 days.
Oh, that is awful.
Verizon blows.
Yeah, it's awful. Oh, you're asking about what I was doing?
Yes.
Mostly, yesterday, this is the one day of the week in which, yesterday was, in which I had zero. So I had the afternoon. I ended up falling asleep on the couch.
Hold on. Yeah. We call that a nap in America.
It was fantastic. So I haven't had a nap in a long time. So, and I was absolutely exhausted. But tonight's trivia, tomorrow trivia, Thursday's trivia, and then extra radio starts Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
When you do the trivia, do you try to steer clear of the politics stuff?
I don't do I have the person that is in charge of the company chooses all of the questions. And
they do.
Yeah. And so there are politics, but it's not the way that you'd think. It would be things like, what president died in his bathtub.
Oh, that's history.
Things like that. Yeah, it's history. But that's as close as we get. The one that we did have last week.
But they don't ever ask, like, who hid top secret emails on a bathroom server?
Well, come close to that. There was a question about which drug was found recently at the White House. Oh, yeah. And so, yeah. The nice part about it is, of course, during, you play music in between the questions. I played Eric Clapton's Cocaine.
Oh, did you really?
Of course.
As a teaser?
Well, yeah, because there are layers in this. If you're paying attention, there's certain things that all drop in. Not
did you give half credit for who left it? Like,
no.
And half credit for
no, but you had to pick, and it was fentanyl, cocaine.
You gave them multiple choice.
Yeah, it's multiple choice.
That one is so current. Yeah. It's so. I mean, if you can't get that one, you should be disqualified.
Exactly. That's why I didn't feel bad running the Eric Clapton thing. But one of the other questions the other night was, I think it was a Thursday night. Yeah, it was about what food you can eat that makes you more attractive to mosquitoes. It gives you an odor that mosquitoes are attracted to.
Oh, you told me this one.
Yeah, so I played.
It was Spam.
No, I played Gwen Stefani's Holla Back Girl, because about 2 minutes and 22 seconds into that, she says, "This is bananas." B-A-N-A-N-A-S.
Oh, bananas.
And it's bananas. Yeah, and so there are things like that
delicious.
that I go through, and if you listen, there was another question the other day about that, you've seen the cows they paint and do. It was asking where that art exhibit first started. And I played a song by Chicago. And again, it started in Chicago. But if you knew the band, you got the
25 or 6 to 4?
Yeah. And the other one was who did what was it, Dancing in the Dark? It was a duet with David Bowie. And it's Mick Jagger. And I played a Rolling Stones song, but I played a deep cut Stones song. So you have to know the Stones catalog to get the hint.
How many people look up from their little notepad and beer to look at you and give you that nodding?
Normally 1 or 2 during that one. My favorite one is they'll do one per round. There's a music question, like, what was the first number 1 hit, or in what year this song, or you have to pick the band or something else. And this is a number of years ago, not 90 years, but a number of weeks ago. And I'm playing it, and I play the right answer when there's about a minute left in, before you have to answer the question. You get 3.5 minutes between each question. And at about a minute, I brought up the right answer. And my best thing is I had a guy sitting at the back of the bar, and all of him goes, F yeah!
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
Puts his arms
Obviously,
up and yells.
this
and
is
I'm
a family
event.
event.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a good one. This is the family event.
Yeah.
Listen, we can't break at 6:31. No one would understand what's happening here.
It'd be so weird.
Should we play the Katie? It's a current events thing.
Let's
it's
do it in
not
the
quite
news.
the Thorpe Report.
But if we break now, I could play it during the news for you.
Oh, you know what? And that makes it newsy.
Exactly. It's almost like we know what we're doing.
So listen, Alexa jinxed it. I blame Alexa. She texted and she goes, "My God, you're going to finish before 6:30." And then I said, "Well, you just jinxed it.
Yeah.
You've clearly screwed us on that." And then someone else, another great listener, texted in, "Blah blah blah, move on." And my response was ditto. So I don't know if that, like, listen, if you listen to the show, that's what this segment is for.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it doesn't really serve any other purpose for us.
Not at all.
And then the rest of the show, at least in terms of the 6 o'clock hour, it gets laid out like this.
And marginally better.
Yeah, we cut away for a break. All the effort Billy put in the early hours of the morning here to put together the news, we get the benefit of that through the Thorpe Report. And then we cut away and we come back and we really risk some FCC licensure. And frankly, you can't spell licensure without censure. We risk that as well through the Thorpe Report. So if you haven't heard it yet, buckle up, kids, put your drinks down, pull over to the side of the road and pay attention, because it gets real after this. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. As promised, we get caught up on all the great current events, local and otherwise, with our good friend, Billy Thorpe. William?
Hey, good morning. Well, on Monday, mercury in the thermometers reached a record, 99 degrees.
Dang.
Yeah, beating the record from 16 years ago by only 2 degrees, according to the National Weather Service. As you outlined, storms possible today, a few p.m. thunderstorms tomorrow, and then, of course, lightning bolts and showers over the weekend. Police in Denver investigating a double shooting near or at a homeless encampment in uptown Denver. Few details about the shooting were released yesterday by law enforcement. They're just saying it happened around 2 p.m. near East 17th Avenue in Logan. 2 victims were located, transported to the hospital. Conditions are unknown at this time. No suspect information. 2 people avoided injuries when the boat they were on caught fire at Chatfield Reservoir yesterday. Yeah, the South Metro was called to the fire around 3:45. 2 people on board. The boat jumped into the water, which helps. They were not injured. High winds pushed the boat closer to the shore. Fire was contained to just the boat, which normally happens when something catches fire on the water.
The boat called Maui.
Yes. Also, police in Lakewood looking for a man accused of attacking a female jogger and sexually assaulting her earlier this month.
Good Lord, this is happening quite a bit, it seems.
It happened at Walker Branch Park Sunday, August 6th. Right around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, man began following the jogger for almost 2 blocks, then attacked her from behind at 14th Avenue in Harlan, grabbed the victim, and then fondled her. Man, they've released the pictures, and he took off northbound on Harlan. He's a Hispanic male, 20s to 30s, thin build, 5'8" to 5'10", black facial hair. It's now a now former Aurora police officer pleaded guilty yesterday in connection with an on-duty car crash that killed a man back in March. It's Eduardo Lenderos, 26, pleaded guilty to 1 count of criminally negligent homicide, and that's a felony. Vehicular homicide charge was dismissed as part of the plea agreement. He killed Elias Anderson, 44, in the crash on March 4th. It's the one on East Base Avenue near South Chambers Road.
That is a probation-eligible 1 to 3 year sentence. This guy, unlikely to do prison, is my guess.
Wow. Now, this is the one where we had the body camera footage showing the officer driving more than 100 miles per hour, listening to music, and reaching for his touchscreen computer moments before the crash. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. Also, the Colorado Governor Jared Polis announced that he is issuing an executive order aimed at addressing housing challenges for the homeless and other people. Goal of the executive order is to include increasing housing opportunities, protecting the environment, and aligning with climate goals. That sounds all nice and, like...
It sounds like an opportunity for government to hijack local control. Let's take a look.
Yeah, exactly. Governor's office said that nearly a third of Colorado households spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and that people are forced to live farther away from their jobs, leading to more traffic and decreased access to job opportunities. The order's aim is to reduce the amount of time the Division of Housing within the Department of Local Affairs has to approve loans and grants from 240 days down to 90. 240 days? The hell?
Yeah, I don't know. That's weird.
Your government in action.
But again, I don't like the idea that the governor is out there saying, and you cities and counties, this is how you'll do this. Like, who gives a crap what your opinion is, man?
Yeah, I don't like the fact that he's doing that. But if his opinion is to go from 240 to 90, okay, you have my attention. I'm not saying I'm behind it, but
it's
I'm
probably a better
listen.
question posed to these local folks. But
exactly, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I know.
Whatever. But here's the thing: too many people out there are like, well, it's a good idea. Let's just do it. And it's like, hang on. How are we getting there? That's an issue.
Exactly. Also, our Colorado Supreme Court, we're going to talk about this here in just a little bit, cleared the way for a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar property tax relief measure to appear on the November ballot because they declined to address the argument from a group of lawyers that filed an issue about Proposition HH saying, and basically the court just said, let's see what happens. We're not going to do anything before because voters might be confused, and let's see if they are confused, and then we will decide to do something. Which is just stupid.
We're going to talk to super lawyer Chris Murray about this thing. And when I asked, I said, hey, are you available to talk about it? He said, unfortunately. Because
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, but this is, it's just bonkers. But the way Billy described it is exactly correctly. And that is, unless we pass it, it's almost the Nancy Pelosi approach.
Exactly.
We can't overrule it until we pass it.
Yes, once we pass it, then we'll decide if we can overrule it. Who cares if the voters are confused when we're doing it? That doesn't matter, silly people. And speaking of silly people, evidently KDVR ran out of law experts and talk to somebody that we know well about a change in the
sorry.
Elijah McClain case. And we're looking at that
Charges
report.
against 2 Aurora police officers related to the death of Elijah McClain have been reduced, but it's not likely to have a big impact on the case or any potential sentence if the cops are convicted. Problem Solvers investigative reporter Rob Lowe joins us now to explain. Rob.
Erica, this case is being prosecuted by the Colorado Attorney General's office, and last week it filed a motion to dismiss counts against each of the officers that are known as sentence enhancers. The prosecutor called the charges redundant as to what those 2 officers already face.
Weird.
It's been 4 years since 3 police officers stopped Elijah McClain while the 23-year-old was walking home from a convenience store wearing a ski mask. He had broken no laws, but would wind up dead after 2 paramedics allegedly overdosed McClain with ketamine at the behest of the officers. It's been 2 years since the 5 men were indicted for McClain's death, and the first trial for 2 of those cops starts next month. But those 2 men, Aurora police officer Randy Rodema and former officer Jason Rosenblatt, will no longer face sentence enhancement counts.
Turns out those counts were unnecessary, but here's the part that gets me. They were unnecessary at the time of indictment.
Fox 31 legal analyst George Brauchler says the charges never made much sense, since they were unlikely to add any prison time if the 2 men were convicted. Both are already facing reckless manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, and assault. And it's the assault that carries the most time,
That's right.
5 to 16 years.
Yeah.
And it's the assault count that was tied to the sentence enhancement counts.
So the charge that the prosecutors dumped the sentencing enhanced counts on already had that built into it anyway. They never needed it. And so what I think the public should know is the 2 charges that tie them to the cause of death are actually the least of the problems these officers face. The biggest charge against them is the assault causing serious bodily injury, not death. That's the charge.
Wow.
That assault charge carries more.
Yeah, who cares what he
just, a lot of that was made up on the spot. They confronted me. I was, when you're asked to do the legal analysis stuff, first off, huge honor that anyone would care what my opinion is. But when my text back to Rob is, hey, is this a waist up shot? Because I'm looking to go shorts and sandals. Exactly. And maybe, like the Colorado mullet on Zoom, but I'm looking to do it in person. And then I hear, hey, we're going to need a 2-shot. You're probably going to have to wear legit pants.
Oh,
I'm like,
damn.
What?
And guess what? They didn't do the 2-shot. He lied to you.
They did do. I mean, they filmed a 2-shot.
Oh yeah,
I don't know
filmed
if they used it.
No, they didn't.
But I just thought to myself, what's happening in my life that my question isn't just, hey, what's the subject? And hey, how can I be super helpful? That's all baked in there. But there's always the follow-on. Do I need to wear pants?
Yes, exactly. Do I need to brush my teeth and comb my hair?
What has happened to me? What has happened to our state?
This is basically this is called being a radio person. That's
the reason,
it. That's the reason we're behind the microphone.
Because right now you can see me on the Rumble or the YouTubes, and I'm just in a navy blue T-shirt that used to fit a lot better before I started doing the morning show. But down south, it's shorts, and look, I'll hold it up.
Yeah.
Look, it's just my little moccasin slipper. That's it. That's what I'm wearing around here.
It is great.
Because the trip from here to the car doesn't actually include a trip to the shower. I'm being very candid with you. That doesn't happen until later in the day or the night before. Oh, if you're counting on me to shower before I come onto the radio, folks, you are going to be living in disappointment forever, because that means getting up an extra, 15, 20 minutes early?
Oh, absolutely. Well,
thank you.
The rule in radio always has been, if you're walking the halls of the radio station, the people that look like they're homeless are the on-air talents. Everybody else is dressed and presentable. But if you look at some guy he looks like, are we doing something with a mission locally here that we're helping them?
Yeah.
No, he's on the air in the morning.
Pass by Tom in the hallway, and we each asked the other for a sandwich.
Exactly.
I thought maybe that was something like.
Well, why do you think they left the pie on the table back there for us overnight?
What I like is they left the pie on the table uncovered.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They're not going to care. It's the morning guys. They'll eat anything.
Guys. Yeah, they have no idea what salmonella.
They're the Mikey of Life cereal. They're like, whatever it is. They're probably going to try to get a shake from McDonald's. Idiots.
Yeah. Morons.
Listen, we've screwed this whole thing up again. I've taken more time than I need to or should have from Billy. Thank you for humoring me, man. Let's cut away for a break. When we come back, it's going to be the good part of the show. That's the YouTube. You choose the words, you choose the news. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
Big Head Bill and the Monsters coming at you here on the George Show 710 KNUS. It's that time that we've been waiting for. It's called You Choose the News. William.
Yes, it's that time that everybody regrets in the morning to listen to. Yes, it is time for the favorite of everyone, the fake radio news game show that we call You Choose the News. We have scoured the interwebs for maybe 5 minutes this morning to find stupid stories because, boy, are there a lot of them. giving them ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. All righty, sir. Here are your headlines this morning. Headline number 1, reptile romance regrets. Headline number 2, follow your dreams, now with glitter. Headline number 3, no more being one with nature. And headline number 4, fabulous super soldiers. All righty, your choices yet again are reptile romance regrets, follow your dreams, now with glitter, no more being one with nature, and fabulous super soldiers. Your choice.
Fabulous super soldiers.
Fabulous super soldiers. This is coming to us from Russia. You know, they're kind of involved in a little issue with Ukraine at this point. Well, an advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning that Ukraine's military is going to become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
Oh, wait.
Because they're going to do a lot of the gay stuff.
What?
Yes.
What?
Yes, exactly. The advisor said the U.S. and Ukraine are going to use neuro-linguistic programming and other brainwashing techniques to turn the Ukrainian soldiers super gay against their will.
Such thing.
And then
Come on.
that psychological change is going to make them strong like the warriors in Sparta. Because they said, yes, you know, the Spartans were all obviously gay. They were.
What?
Yes, the quote actually said they were homos. This was the politics of their leadership.
Who is this? Who's saying stuff like this?
Sergei Markov, former advisor to Putin, while appearing on Russian TV.
What in the hell are you talking about,
Exactly.
man? This can't be a real story.
No, it is. It's right here. I wouldn't lie to you.
If
But
it's on paper.
Yes, but it is. That this guy, for this Russian
The
advisor,
gay Ray?
Yes, he said that we are gonna work to turn all of the Ukrainian soldiers super gay, and that's gonna make them super powerful, and then they're gonna defeat the Russians. I know.
Can't we just give them F-16s?
I know. I just thought, only if you paint them pink and then put a rainbow on the tail.
Oh, buddy, that could have ended this whole segment. But keep going.
Yes.
Let's try to knock out these other two.
Reptile romance regrets, follow dreams.
Yes,
glitter.
reptile romance regrets, please.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are telling you, please stop kissing the turtle. That could be taken another way. But evidently, 11 states have been impacted with a salmonella outbreak, and it's leading to people kissing their turtles, sometimes with tongue. That's just
what?
No, I just added that. The CDC said that if you have pet turtles, you can get salmonella from them. You got to wash your hands, and that's an issue with most reptiles. Most reptiles can carry a form of salmonella, so you have to be careful. That's why you also don't kiss your snake. Again,
hang on. You just went gay again.
I know.
I don't know why you're doing that. I don't know what the theme of this thing is. Don't talk about kissing your snake. First off, who does that kind of yoga? Go on.
Exactly. Final choice: follow dreams with glitter, and no more being one with nature.
God, we're gonna have to try to hit the hat trick of glitter. Glitter.
Oh my God, I can't believe we did this. All right, we're going to Tampa Bay for this one, and we're meeting Sabrina Verlans. When she was just 14, she wanted to follow in mom's footsteps and her stripper heels.
What?
Yes, at the age of 20, she has done an interview saying she has followed her mom's dreams. Just like mommy, she is now dancing in clubs in Pennsylvania.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Amish clubs.
She said that recently she bought 2 outfits along with those really tall, see-through heels, and she went and auditioned, and on her very first nights of work, she took home $300, and now she's working 10 to 25 hours a week on the pole, on the stage, in the private room.
How is this a story?
Because she's following her dreams. It's one of those lifestyle stories that they did in Tampa.
Why?
Who
it's
about this daughter
this story to put it out there for you to find?
The thing is that someone said, "Hey, we're going to do the story about the stripper following mom's stripper dreams."
Listen,
okay, back to you. I've done enough damage.
I promise you, it's going to get more serious and legitimate when we come back, because Chris Murray and the whole HH thing. Please stick around. George Brauchler, 710. I'm sorry, KNUS. Hey, welcome to hour number 2. That's dos in Spanish, zwei in German. We've got 4, folks. We've got 3 left until we turn it over to a guy named Charlie Kirk, and then he passes the baton 1 hour later over to Dennis Prager, who will be right here in Centennial, Colorado at the View House on August the 30th. Your opportunity to go see him in that intimate environment where you get a premium cigar and the drink and the carving station and the meats and stuff like that. All of that can be found if you click on the banner at the 710knus.com website. Get yourself a ticket. I will be there. Come up and say hi, but only if you have something nice to say. Otherwise, call Billy. That's really how it goes at 303-696-1971. Listen, I want to talk about some of the current events of the day in a way that you just don't get from the normal newspapers and mainstream media, and that is by bringing up a friend of the show, friend of mine, super lawyer. It's Chris O. Murray. The O is for OMG. Sir, thanks for joining us.
George, people are going to think that it's like O. Murray, like a leprechaun, like O apostrophe Murray.
What's the O for?
It is for Owen. That's my father's name.
Oh, that's a great name. I do like OMG. I'm not asking you to legally change it, but I'm just saying Chris OMG Murray on an attorney's card. That just
I'll see if I can get some client to say that that's catchy. I doubt it though.
Well, you get called in when things get catastrophic, right? Like when clients are in super need and they're like, OMG, then they're thinking, oh my God, let's call Chris OMG Murray.
That is true occasionally.
You could be the constitutional strong arm. Do you know what I mean? Like a picture of you up there holding the Constitution or a car dropping behind you. I love the image.
Wasn't that already like in Breaking Bad? Like didn't Saul Goodman say that the Constitution says you have rights, and I agree.
I want to get you an action figure, Chris, that we a Saul Goodman for that thing. Anyway, listen, before this turns into something that should take place over a beer, let me talk to you about the thing I said I was going to talk to you about, and that is Preparation HH is this. It's really not just that. There's a couple other bills involved here, including HB 303 and HB 1311 and all that. Nonetheless, it's going to appear on the ballot, and it's going to, without ever alerting any single voter to this reality, if it passes, we will all lose our Tabor refunds for eternity. So a group called Advance Colorado, helmed by a good buddy named Michael Fields, wicked smart guy who's probably too young to be taken seriously, and yet he's really smart. He filed a lawsuit, and that lawsuit said, hey, justices, there is a single subject issue with this ballot measure seems to contain at least 4 different issues. And there was some optimism that maybe the Supreme Court would intervene and take some action here. Well, they issued an order. What happened?
You're familiar with the concept in football of punting, right, George?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what just happened. The Supreme Court just punted on 3rd down. So I'll say, first thing, the Advance Colorado did the right thing here by bringing this lawsuit, and I was one of the people who thought that this lawsuit was meritorious, and I was candidly optimistic that the Supreme Court would do something here, at least at the bare minimum, require that the ballot title for Proposition HH, and by the way, I love the Preparation HH.
Same.
This is why you are you, George. I hadn't thought of it.
I could take credit for that, and I will. And just us talking, yeah, I didn't invent that, but I'm going to claim credit.
Okay, all right. Well, whoever did is a genius. It's very funny, but the lawsuit. Certainly, I think a lot of folks thought that at least the title would get cleared up, and there are many folks, including me, who are now wrong. Who thought that the Supreme Court would step in to say, you cannot possibly cram this many subjects, right, into a piece of legislation that was actually passed by the General Assembly. And just because you refer parts of it to the voters, avoid review of compliance with the single subject requirement. But all of us who thought that are wrong, because the Supreme Court has just opened the floodgates for this type of thing.
It seems like there's been a couple different things here that have taken place with the courts that signal that the initiative-driven ballot measures, like you and I might be a part of through signatures and all that other stuff, they are very, very tightly regulated. But if the legislature wants to vomit up something on the ballot that is violative of all of the other restrictions that apply to us, the courts are just like, well, whatever.
I mean, I think the message here is that if you're trying to pass an initiated measure, the courts are going to police whether or not you are confusing the voters, right, with the language that you use for your ballot title. And they're going to police the title board in making sure that the title board gives you a very, very accurate, descriptive ballot title. Whereas if they want to refer a measure, it seems like a different set of rules apply to them. It's almost like they are free to confuse the voters. And then maybe after the fact, the Supreme Court may have said, oh, maybe then we'll decide if they were confused.
Now, there were two different arguments advanced here. I'm categorizing them the way the Supreme Court did in the opinion, a 28-page opinion that they issued doing nothing. One of them is to say that the single subject requirement is, maybe this isn't their word, but it's mine, is not ripe.
Correct. And so they basically said, look, you can't, but this is right as far as it goes, right? The single subject requirement, the Colorado Constitution, and there's a whole host of decisions under this. I've litigated under this requirement before, and it says, look, if you pass a bill that addresses 13 different subjects, right? So, addresses driver's licensing for truckers, right? And the death penalty for abusive cats, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And along with a bunch of other things.
Which happened. That was 1978.
Right, sure. I mean, there have been some laws like this. And some truck driver comes into court and says, look, I don't want to comply with that new licensing requirement because it was part of a bill with 13 subjects. Court, I want you to rule that the law is unconstitutional. Courts will do that. And the Supreme Court has said the time to challenge single subject in legislation is after it is adopted. Here, the reason why I thought Advanced Colorado was correct, and all the county governments that sued along with them, I thought they were right because the legislature chose to do this not in a joint resolution referring something to people, right? But they chose to pass a bill, Senate Bill 303.
That's right.
Which portions of which are law right now without a vote of the people. And because they chose to go that way and to refer a ballot question through a passed law, I and a lot of other people thought that the single subject challenge is probably ripe. The Supreme Court said, no, you can do it that way, and it's still not ripe. It's because essentially, by referring portions of this to the people, the legislative process is still ongoing.
This is interesting because it feels like, this is what they said. It doesn't feel like it. This is what they said. We're not going to address this unless and until the voters pass it. And so, Chris, the Supreme Court is now going to say, hey, we'll take this up again if a majority of voters enact this into law. Like, what the hell are they going to do after that? My guess would be they'd want to defer to the will of the voters, but are they going to then take this apart and go, well, we find this part to be misleading, so we're not going to enact that part of it? Or we only have one subject we can actually pass, so we're going to get rid of three? I mean, what in the hell could their recourse be once voters get a chance to whack at this thing?
Well, I mean, look, like since they punted on all the questions, I mean, like, let's not forget what 303 did and what Proposition HH will do. Okay, 303, House Bill 1123, and
1311 is in there somewhere too.
Sorry, 1311. My mistake. But it not only includes multiple subjects, right? So a gradual decrease in TABOR refunds, right? A increase in funding for primary education from the state. And then it also functions as a shadow referendum, right, on changing the way TABOR refunds are distributed next year, right, while they still exist. It takes TABOR refunds from being based loosely on income, right, how much you paid, to a flat refund for everybody, right? And so, if that's okay in a referred measure from the legislature, I mean, it seems like what the Supreme Court is saying is that, hey, it'd be perfectly fine, at least pre-ballot, right, for the legislature to say, hey, would you like your property taxes decreased? Oh, and by the way, if you vote for that, right, we're going to throw all of Colorado's prairie dogs into a wood chipper.
Right. Again. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I'm reading this here right here. Listen to this quote. And they're citing a prior case called Pole Hill.
Yep.
And they're citing the Constitution. And it says this prior holding is that courts lack subject matter jurisdiction to review a legislative referendum for compliance with the single subject requirement of the Colorado Constitution unless and until it's been approved by the voters. How does that make any sense? The entire purpose of the single subject rule is to ensure that voters know exactly what they're voting for, and they're only tackling one piece at a time. And yet they're like, we're not even going to. It's almost like they're saying, we don't want to put effort into something that might fail. If it fails, then we don't actually we don't have to do any work.
And there's a very basic truth there, right? But Pole Hill was a separation of powers case, right? Pole Hill was about, look, we've got a referred measure, right? Not something that became a law, not something that was signed by the executive, right? But a measure where the legislature said, hey, we think this is a good idea, but we're putting the question to the people, right? We're not sending it over to the governor's desk for a signature to make it a law, right? We're sending it to the people. And what the Pole Hill court basically said is, hey, look, when the legislature does that, the people are essentially now functioning as the legislature. And because the legislature is still debating this, it would be inappropriate for the court to step in, right, and interfere in that process. I actually think Pole Hill is probably right as far as Pole Hill goes, right? But that's not what we had here. The legislature, instead of passing a referred measure, right, used a bill to refer a ballot question. They passed a law, parts of which are going to the voters.
Right.
Yeah, and so the legislative process on Senate Bill 303 is complete, and that's the part of this decision that I can't square it with Pole. I mean, the Supreme Court has done it for us, right? So now, as a lawyer, I have to square it with Pole Hill, but I just think it's wrong.
It seems like 303, when you say it's complete, it's done. By definition, the fact that a piece of it has to go to the voters and the other piece can exist separate from the voters tells you that there's a couple different subjects going on here. They can't be the same subject if one requires voter approval and the other one just requires the libs under the gold dome to approve it.
Yeah, I mean, and in fairness, most of the pieces that exist without it are things like, implementation pieces, like preparation for its implementation, commissions that have to be formed to get ready, all this sort of stuff, right? But the simple fact of the matter is that the legislature could have passed that little piece of legislation, right, and then passed a referred question, right? They chose to instead pass a bill that included everything. And look, I'm just an old-fashioned lawyer, right? I think the way people choose to do things, right, and what the Constitution says matters. And if they pass the bill, it is by definition, Jared Polis signed it in a big signing session out in front of a guy's house up in Commerce City, right? When you sign a bill like that and it's now become law, that legislative process is complete. And the Supreme Court, I think, could have passed on these questions. They chose not.
We're talking with Chris Murray, super constitutional lawyer who's on the show trying to help us make sense of this. Somebody texted in, hey, is there no appeal from this? And my guess is, Chris, the answer would be not when it's interpreting the state constitution. There's nowhere to go. We've gone there. It's over.
100%. The Colorado Supreme Court is the highest court in the land on the state constitution. There is no appeal from this. Again, as you noted, George, and as the Supreme Court left out there, if Proposition HH is adopted, then the Supreme Court has said all of this is ripe again. And there can be another law.
Honestly, though, let's say that's true. Have they ever gone back and undid the will of the voters on something like this, on a single subject thing?
On a single subject challenge? Boy, George, I ought to know the answer to that. And
well, don't guess if you don't know, but I can't think of one. I'm not you. Okay, so I haven't done the deep dive, but I've paid attention.
I want to say there was a very, very, well, no. After the vote, I cannot recall one. I mean, remember, the whole reason for the single subject requirement in referred measures is actually Tabor, right? The liberals in state government at the time, Tabor included multiple subjects.
And you're right. And they were flummoxed.
And after Tabor was passed, they put the single subject requirement into the Constitution for initiated constitutional measures.
There's another portion of this, and it's not the single subject piece, but it's one that they did opine on, and that was the clear expression challenge. What is that?
Well, so an initiative, referred measure has to clearly express, right, in its title what it is about. And they said, look, we can review this, but we think in fairness, like it is mostly about property taxes. And so this is the typical sort of challenge that you would get up from a title board, right?
Yeah.
Where, hey, does the title accurately express what it says? And the Supreme Court basically said, yeah, I mean, we get it that there may be some additional funding for schools. There may be some changes to the way Tabor refunds are calculated. I think the part where their decision is the biggest head scratcher in this regard, right, is where they ignore the fact, well, they don't ignore, but they say, yeah, we understand that Proposition HH is actually going to be sort of a secret referendum, right, on these flat Tabor refunds, right, on a separate House bill. But sometimes other legislation, affects what happens with another piece of legislation in the legislative process. And so we don't think that needs to be expressed in the title. And I got to tell you, I mean, that is, I think the court bent itself in a pretzel to avoid that problem. And this, again, opens the door for only the legislature can do it, right? But the legislature can say, hey, let's put a property tax reduction measure. Let's put a regulation reduction measure in front of the people, reduce a small piece of regulation, and then secretly, right, say that if that passes, taxes are going to go up in another area. I don't see how that helps the democratic process.
But this to me, Chris, is the problem. Having punted on the single subject thing, they then say the fact that the title doesn't refer to the multiple subjects, that's no big deal. Titles aren't meant to be necessarily completely accurate. I mean, they can only mention a part of it. It's like, well, dudes, you just allowed these clowns to smuggle in 4 different issues into one ballot measure. And then the fact that the title only addresses one of them, you go, nah, not that big a deal. Like, come on, man.
Well, right. I mean, but George, if you think about it, and I've been scratching my head about this too. If you think about it, though, if you've decided that you can't say anything about the single subject, right? But then you required that the title, right, expressly refer to the multiple subjects, right? Then what you've basically done is said, yeah, look, like we all know this is unconstitutional, right? But go ahead and vote on it anyway. And I just think the Supreme Court did not want to say that. It may be why, I have to admit, I've been scratching my head too about why this took so long to get out. The lawyers for Advance and for the state had this thing fully briefed at the end of July, and like this opinion, this is the politically easy, politically expedient opinion that, to my mind, could have been out a lot sooner. So, I wonder if there was some wrestling to get this to 7-0 over there at the court.
Was it 7-0?
Was 7-0. Justice Gabriel wrote the opinion, but it's 7-0.
Yeah, but keep in mind, folks, every single member of the Colorado Supreme Court was appointed by somebody not Governor Owens. Just saying. Having said that, I'm not sure that politics weighs in here. I think these are all super smart, super ethical people, and they're all very good looking. But here's another piece of this clear assertion piece. The legislature and the governor deliberately, in my opinion, use language that misleads voters about what they're giving up. So rather than say, may the state keep, retain, and or spend excess Tabor funds, which you and I and our neighbors would understand, they talk about a state surplus, like, oh, look at that. We just happen to have generated more tax dollars, in no way tying them to, oh, by the way, you would get all these dollars, but for this intervention by the legislature.
Yep. I mean, I do. I think it's, and by the way, Advance's attorneys focused on that dishonesty in their briefing. I got to say that I just think that, it is honest in this way, George, right? This is the way our Democratic friends look at your money, right? It is any of it that they get their hands on, to their mind, is sound money and ought to be theirs.
Yeah, this is so the Supreme Court, in essence, punted on all the substantive stuff regarding the multiple issues, but they did rule against advance, and in my opinion, Colorado voters, by saying that this title, even though they agree it doesn't contain the detail or specificity necessary to really advise people about what the bill's about or what the ballot measure is about, they said that's okay, not a big deal. It's this is their language. Such detail is neither necessary nor necessarily desirable. And the absence of such detail does not cause preparation HH to run afoul of our Constitution's clear expression requirement. And by the way, that's the end. There is, people keep texting in, there's got to be someone they can appeal to. Nope, just us, just voters. We're the only ones now that can step in and end this legislative and gubernatorial trickeration to try to take away our Tabor refunds for the rest of eternity. This isn't like just a couple years and it'll lower property taxes. No, this is for eternity. You're going to allow government to explode in growth by keeping all of your Tabor refunds when you overpaid your taxes, according to the Constitution, if you pass this thing. Chris, do you have time for me to shift gears real quickly to one other thing before I cut you loose? Did you get a chance to even peruse Governor Polis's executive order about housing?
Yes, I did.
Any thoughts?
I mean, it's basically a virtue signal. It can't do anything, but it's basically, look, this is him saying that housing is still very important to me. By the way, I'm coming for your local zoning next year. In the interim, I'm going to try and push the state to emphasize my priorities, which is affordable housing and growth along transit corridors, light rail.
Well, how often do you use the light rail, Chris?
I used to use it a lot before I had to worry about getting stabbed.
I didn't think you were going there, friend, but I get it. I think that's a real issue. I've used it to take me up to Invesco Field, Mile High, whoever owns it now, the naming rights, Mile High Stadium. But other than that, never. I mean, maybe a Rockies game once, but it just becomes, especially on the ride back, it becomes every drunk person who made the right decision to not drive to the stadium is now packed into that train headed southbound. It's a combination of, if we win, joy, intoxication, browbeating the people wearing the Chiefs or Raiders uniforms, and then you're just waiting for someone to light that powder keg and for it to go off. And so you just huddle in the corner with your kids. You hope you get a seat. You hope that smell isn't urine, and then you run to your car, you know?
I mean, that's basically where I'm at. I mean, like, look, I actually think we've got a pretty decent, as far as like where the tracks are and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a great network. But if you don't have, first thing, if you don't have a need to go downtown, why ride it, right?
Right.
And second, if you can't be safe, why on earth would a sane person ride it?
Yeah, I don't know, and nobody that rides it pays. So, I mean, they've made it quote unquote free. I think they're using Tabor refund dollars to fund the RTD. We'll have to talk about that down the road. Listen, I do want to get you back on in the future to talk about this growing momentum behind this 14th Amendment Section 3 suggestion that secretaries of state can simply decide not to put Donald Trump on the ballot. Have you been following that?
I'd be happy to talk about it because, in fact, I've actually litigated one of these challenges.
Buddy, that's great.
Not to President Trump, but to Senator Ron Johnson up in Wisconsin last cycle.
We will get you on to talk about that in the future. Buddy, thank you for so much of your time. I know you're busy. We'll talk with you soon.
Sounds good, George. Thank you.
That is Chris O. Murray, the O for OMG or Owen, depends on who you believe. Super constitutional lawyer. I really appreciate him doing the deep dive on this thing. You should know that's what's going on here, man. If you're looking for reasons to once again question how government operates and whether it's intended to be for your benefit or government's benefit, this gives you some indications, man. The legislature and the governor have gone out of their way to deceive you about what goes on inside preparation HH. And it sounds like the court is saying the Constitution lets them do it. Hey, we'll get to your calls at 303-696-1971, as well as your texts. There's some more stuff I want to talk to you about with this executive order as well. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at CastleRockCDJR.com. Castle Rock, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy your
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Chris OMG Murray, a super constitutional lawyer, for that deep dive on Preparation HH and the latest failure in front of the Supreme Court. By the way, we can chalk up a win, finally, for Phil and his team of the AG's office. They adequately defended the governor and the legislature's obfuscating efforts to mislead voters in court. Congratulations. That's a big win right there. Couple other things that took place that we had referenced, and that is this executive order by the governor. All of this stuff, by the way, easily findable and readable online. You don't have to take my word for it, but I've gone ahead and printed it out and highlighted some of the early things I've discovered in this thing. One is it's Executive Order D 2023. I presume that's the year 014. So the 14th executive order of this particular year. Now, if you go to page 1 of this under background and purpose, there's some interesting stuff I highlighted. One is it sounds like our state demographer has estimated that by 2050, and folks, that's only 27 years from now, 1.72 million more people will be added to the state of Colorado. Holy smokes, that is nuts. This is what he says under background and purpose. The people of Colorado expect us to deliver more affordable housing choices so Coloradans can stay in their communities and live near their work. Half of that makes sense to me. But the live near their work part, I specifically live in Douglas County, even if I had a job in Denver, so that I don't have to live in Denver. No knock on if you live in Denver. That's a lifestyle that you can choose. I don't want to be in the city. And part of the hubris here of what takes place under the Gold Dome, especially when state government is dominated by those who live in the Boulder-Denver corridor, is that everybody wants to live like those in the Boulder-Denver corridor. The majority of Coloradans have no interest in wanting to live like Denverites or Boulderites. They just don't. So you do whatever you want with your housing stuff, but please don't pretend that living near where they work is a priority for Coloradans. It isn't for me. In fact, I'd rather work out of my house, which isn't the same thing. I do not want to live in an urban setting. No interest. It depends on how much you pay me. But if you look at who's the head of state government, I mean, look at what you got there. You got a governor who, although he hides away in COVID times up in Weld County in his ranch or in Southern California, he is from Boulder, right? And still maintains his Boulder property. You've got Phil, the AG, who spent his time in Colorado working as a dean in Boulder, but lives in Denver. Jenna Griswold, all from Denver. If you look at the leadership of the state Senate and the House, almost entirely folks that hail from the metro area, it's just no surprise that the governor's determination of what the people of the Colorado expect is that they want to live near where they work. Maybe if you're that way, let me know. I mean, text in off of the app 710KNUS or call in, but that's not anything I'm excited about. Billy, maybe you want to live closer to work or you want to work closer to where you live, but honestly, I just don't know anybody that says, man, I sure wish I could afford to live in Denver. I know people that are like, I want to get the hell away from Denver.
No, I think personally that my job should move closer to me. That's what I want. I want that.
That can happen with the right technology, Mark.
Exactly. If we just do this thing right. No, fortunately, I live very close, and it is a huge convenience to being close to work. In fact, there isn't a closer radio station to my house than this one. However, I will share the story that when my wife and I were buying our house, what we did was we put a map of Denver on the floor
and burned it.
I know. And we circled both of where offices were at that time. Again, you're going to transition jobs, etc. But what we did is we took the one that was the furthest east, and we drew a line, and we're going to go east of there because we're not going to drive looking into the sun to and from work. That was important to us because we had spent enough time driving into the freaking sun.
Yeah, so, that's so smart.
So that was one of the things that we chose, that we were like, okay, we're gonna go into this area. Now, I can see the advantage of wanting to have people live closer to the office, but then it's things need to be affordable, but also the lifestyle. If you work downtown, it's super convenient, but rather than sitting here and saying, oh, it's the rent that's out of control, how about you clean up 16th Street Mall? How about we do some things about homeless and the crime?
We'll get rid of Stabby Stabberson on RTD so Chris Murray can ride the RTD again.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, you get on an RTD bus lately and you kind of want to like call the emergency number and go, hello, most wanted. I think I found everybody. I mean, that's pretty much what you get.
They're checking out at King's.
Yes.
Actually, they're not checking out.
Yeah.
They're leaving the store with unpaid for groceries.
Exactly. So I think it's, more than this. Yeah, of course, it's always nice for us to be able to live near where we work. But the mountain towns have been dealing with this for years because many times people that live and work in places like Winter Park and Vail can't live in the city proper. And so they go down and live in Eagle or somewhere else because they have to find affordability. I've got a buddy of mine that does radio in Vail, and he lives outside the town because he has to. He can't afford to live inside the town. And that's just kind of what happens. And we do have that problem with commuting and traffic. And so you just got to get up earlier. My father used to go from what was close to downtown out to Arvada, but he would leave the house at 5:30 in the morning so that he didn't have to deal with the traffic. So you make those types of adjustments. So I don't think that is,
it's just this, I'm telling you, it's this fantasy by the political elites that everybody would love to live in a quote unquote walkable city. And they would just love to be there and have parks that the government designates. This is where you take your dog and you have your Frisbee time. And everybody else we don't like cars. We don't like parking. We're just going to cordon off this beautiful, wonderful, walkable city. There'll be art. There'll be operas. And you'll never need to go anywhere except where you can. I mean, it's just this garbage fantasy we've never seen anywhere. Oh, I'm sorry, except parts of Europe. It isn't America, man.
That's where I was going to go. I was going to go to the idea of the idea of Europe and how they have done it very efficiently. But this is the problem. And maybe, I'm going to talk slowly because of
you talking to the Marines?
Some of the liberal lawmakers that may be listening. There's a difference between most European countries and America. We're much bigger.
Wait,
geography is a problem. So the issue being
I see it as an opportunity, but go on.
When you have places like, Sweden, Finland, Norway, places that are very walkable, but that's a density issue that they have. And they've created a lot of those bike lanes and public transportation as necessities because of moving the volume of people around in that type of dense area. We have not perfected that in any way, shape, or form, in part because geography, just like you are saying, if you were in Sweden, Norway, Finland, other places, Denmark, you would be forced in some ways to either have a very long commute or you'd be sitting in the rural areas because of jobs. And that's okay. But you've made the choice to be further away from the job because of the lifestyle and the type of home that you want. And that's fine too. The idea that the government needs to come in and correct that there's something wrong with that, I simply disagree. I know people that worked for years and in Denver and drove in from Colorado Springs.
Dang.
Yeah. Monument.
Yeah.
In the freaking winter.
Yeah, that
is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's nuts.
But that's what they chose to do because that's where they wanted to raise their family. That's the lifestyle and everything else. They made that choice. And the idea that government is like, again, this is the example that drives me nuts, is that, the people with the pointy hats down in the legislature and sitting in the governor's office go, well, we obviously know better than the rank and file regular people. They're choosing the bad things. They're doing things like the cars and living in the suburbs. And if only we could teach them the joys of living downtown with the homelessness and the drug injections and all the crime. If only they would embrace it like we do. The other question I've got is, how many of these lawmakers, how many of the people, like if Jared Polis wasn't in the governor's mansion, and actually sometimes he's not, where would he be living? Would he be living downtown?
No.
He's in Boulder. That's where his house
why
is.
He owns the ranch in Weld County. What's that for?
Wonder.
I mean, I know he loves raising animals. I've never heard of that before.
Exactly.
Why own the place in Southern California? I presume it's right in the heart of Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing is all these people making the rules aren't living in that area.
Ever.
So stop it.
And speaking of that, it would be neat to see this new approach to forcing local government to bend to the will of some statewide initiative if we started with a place that rhymes with Mulder.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place that I'm just guessing, having lived there 7 years, getting educated and driving up in there on a not infrequent basis in the years since. I've never seen a place that is more anti-affordable housing than Boulder. So let's start there, see how they love it when you're building, some giant 18-family home next to some of those mansions there near Pearl Street. Let's just see how they like it, and then we'll decide whether or not to roll it out to another community.
One of the things that the people in Boulder are always super happy about is when the neighbor decides to rent their house to no less than 9 college students to live in a 4-bedroom house. That they're always super happy about that one, but that's the only way it becomes affordable. And that's part of the problem is how many times do we hear the complaints about, I have too many tenants in the house next to me and it's ruining my property values.
I know.
Well, they do it because it's not affordable, you morons. So
we'll cut away for a break here and we'll come back, but I want to read you a couple other things here. The executive order instructs specific agencies to inventory programs that provide support to local governments. See, this tells me, and I haven't seen it yet, and I'm still going through the order. This tells me we're going to take the approach that the feds do. Feds bend states to their will by saying, hey, if you expect us to use some of the taxpayer money we took from your taxpayers to give it back to you for stuff, you've got to do X, Y, and Z. It feels like that's sort of the direction we're going to go. We're going to inventory local agencies and decide who gets money from us to do what they're going to do. Colorado's housing supply has not kept pace with population growth, leading to increased housing costs. That's what you think is the problem for housing supply? How about all the litigation that you have begged for with the libs under the Gold Dome, making it so easy to sue for any claimed construction defect? How about you tackle construction defect law and then tell me about what's causing housing prices to go up?
And the one highlight I did see there is the idea that they were moving the approval process for some things from 240 days to 90. I'm looking at that going, okay, we might have hit every once in a while, the blind pig finds an acorn. So, okay,
I'll take it.
I appreciate that. But the idea that that's the problem, that it's about the housing supply, it's just, it's ridiculous.
Listen, we're going to continue this. I got to do a quick pay the bills kind of a thing here, but I've sort of hosed myself. So let's just get into a break. We'll come back. We'll do a little magic. I'll continue to talk to you about this executive order, and we'll pick up where we left off. You can call and chime in. Lots of text, by the way, about the housing thing. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, still going through the order. Found some magic language here. Remember how I told you, and I was on page 2 or 3 of this bad boy right here that talked about doing the inventory of the state agencies. Oh, no, I was premature, because under section 4 on page 4, it makes it super crystal clear. Listen to this. I direct all relevant agencies to inventory each relevant agency's own grant and loan programs and additional funding or other programs that provide support to local government partners, and then it lists them all out. Each relevant agency must submit their own report to Polis by December the 15th, detailing the results of the inventory so that they can prioritize programs that can best support the goals he laid out in section 3. That's it, folks. That's the signal. We're now going to take your taxpayer money, send it to the state, and if you want it to be used again in your local communities, your communities will have to bend to the will of the wingnuts out of Denver and Boulder, who seem to have their hands on every lever of state government. If you want Denver and Boulder where you live, congratulations, folks. It's coming for you. Listen, I got to cut away for a break here, and we'll come back at the top of the hour. More of this stuff to go through. I want to talk to you about some stuff. We got a little sound for it, too. Some stuff that took place. Again, talking about Phil Weiser with some charges that got dismissed. There's a deep dive we can get to on that as well. But I want to tell you about QC Kinetix. These are the folks that help fix your pain, and they use you to do it. All you have to do is give them a call. Avoid the knife, avoid all the pills. Regenerative medicine is the answer for you. All you have to do is call them at 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. How about walk in and walk out pain-free? Booyah. 303-900-8986. You can check them out at qckinetics.com. That's QC, begins with a K, ends with an X.com, qckinetics.com. And then call us and tell us how awesome it was. Listen, when we come back, we're going to finish up this executive order. We're going to talk about the case against the officers in the Elijah McClain case, changes in there. We're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming debate. We're going to take your phone calls at 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com. Imagine
We're halfway through the Tuesday show right here on 822-23. It's George Brauchler with you. I'll be with you until 10. Charlie Kirk then 11. Dennis Prager sub at 1. Deb at 3. Steph at 4 to 7. Now listen, Dennis Prager is going to be in town on August the 30th. You get a chance to see him in person and close up. Somebody blanched on text at my use of the term getting intimate with Dennis Prager. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I mean, you're going hands-on. No, I'm kidding. It's an opportunity to be a lot closer and unscripted with the D-Man. And DP will be at the View House on August the 30th. Go to 710knus.com, click on the banner, get yourself a ticket, and then you get yourself a premium cigar, a drink. There's more there, but you get the drink with the ticket. A carving station, hors d'oeuvres. I'm sure plenty of meat products there at the delicious meat products at the Centennial-based View House. Check it out. I'll be there. Billy will not be there. Billy will probably be doing trivia somewhere. Actually, we should do Dennis Prager trivia and incorporate both your evening job and the Dennis Prager night there. I don't know why we haven't done that. We could do it, Dennis Prager trivia. And I imagine it will all be very sensitive and historically accurate.
Yes.
In some way. Or not.
Yeah. This was Dennis's first pet.
Right. And then Stephen.
What was his invisible friend named as a kid?
Seb. Stefan and Deb will be there. I think all the other great hosts that we have. I'm not sure about Dr. Dunn. That dude is so busy, but probably Randy and Jimmy and Big Pete, I think, has threatened to come by, all the big ones. So be part of that thing. Go to 710KNUS, click on the banner, get yourself a ticket, and I'll see you there in just about a week, man. In fact, holy smokes, it's a week from tomorrow, dude. That's a week from tomorrow. We are running out of time to get you those tickets. Now, listen, in the last hour, we started covering the executive order. There's something interesting about this. Billy and I had said approvingly, hey, we love the idea of the governor putting in place an executive order, not that's done all the other stuff that we've talked about, but that accelerates the decision-making process by some of these governmental entities to provide funding. I'm now going to rethink that, because that expedited process is for the purposes of bringing to heel more quickly the local governments and other non-governmental organizations that rely upon state-funded grants and loans and whatnot, to bring them to heel more quickly to bend to the state's idea of solving this housing crisis. And listen, maybe this is a controversial position, you tell me, but I don't think the quote-unquote housing crisis that we're seeing is a statewide issue. It's not that housing isn't expensive everywhere, and it varies where you're at, but this is a Boulder, Denver, perhaps Colorado Springs issue. And yet the state has stepped in after the people that dominate Boulder and Denver, by the way, end up now dominating state government. And you see the pass in between them. I mean, my God, our mayor of Denver is a former state senator. You look at the people that his deputy chief of staff is a former state senator. So you see this going back and forth. The guys that live in Boulder and Denver are now the guys that are at the top of the state government. Their big issues, they're now telling us this is a matter of statewide concern. It's a matter of statewide priority. And thus, we must have a statewide solution. And I'm sorry, I don't see it. And that's not from a position of privilege. That's from a position of I have busted my ass for years, making decisions that put me in a position to live in a place. I don't want to live in Denver, not never, ever. And if you do, that's great. And I want you to live there. But please don't tell me that your city's leadership's crappy decisions that have led to this and the legislature's decisions to go easy on plaintiffs' attorneys who want to sue and stall development based on construction defect, that now that's a matter for Douglas County to deal with. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I choose to live a couple counties away from Denver for a pretty obvious reason. I like some of the benefits of Denver. Hell, you've got a monopoly on the major league franchises. For now, please come to Aurora Broncos. But that's it, man. Otherwise, why? Why would you want to go up there? I like where I'm at. I don't see the housing problem the same way. I see housing costs as a problem, but I don't blame that on the explosion in population. And oh, by the way, I talked to Billy about this off the air. Last time I checked, isn't Denver and isn't the state bending over backward to invite every immigrant, legal or otherwise, to come make their home here in Colorado? And then we go, the population's exploding and it's causing pricing to go up for how is that possible? I mean, there's some sort of schizophrenic approach to this, but at the end of the day, having created this issue, Denver, Boulder, maybe even the Springs, now they turn to you and I and say, you're the ones that have to suck it up and have somebody buy the house next to yours in that HOA-controlled covenant community that you paid top dollar for so that your family could live in a certain place with a certain lifestyle. Sorry, you now have to help fix the state's housing crisis, even though it's not a statewide crisis. You have to help fix it. And the way we do that is we take those taxpayer dollars that you pay to us. This is the state of Colorado talking. And then we hold them hostage and don't give them to your local governments unless they do what we say about remember how they tried to do this initially? They were going to pass a state law, ram it down our throats that took away the authority of local governments to make this decision. CCI, the counties of Colorado, they show up and they're like, oh, my sweet God, please don't do this. Municipalities, please don't do this. This is horrible. So it derails. This is the next best answer. This is the federal government model, folks. This is take your taxpayer money and hold it hostage until you do what we tell you. We need a contract with the state of Colorado. We need someone to be in that governor's office who sees localities as a benefit, not a hindrance, not an obstacle to whatever your statewide issues are. But this thing, if you read this executive order, it's pretty spelled out there. It's pretty clear what they want to do. Here's the strategic growth goals. These form the basis for the state doing their quote-unquote inventory of grants and loans they give to local community organizations and governments and all this other stuff that they'll use to hold this hostage, unless those governments bend to the will of the state. Here's the following are goals for state government. Require less infrastructure. Incentivize development patterns that require less infrastructure. What does that tell you? That's this garbage 15-minute city nonsense that they want to force on us. This is a way to further control you, folks, by the way, is to put you into these urban settings. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't think this is a conspiracy. I think this is a straight-up ideological commitment by the left, and that is we want less rural. Rural means conservative. Rural means freedom. Rural means self-reliance. We don't want you to be self-reliant. We want you to be reliant on the man. And the way to do that is to put you in proximity of the man. So we're going to discourage suburbs. We're going to discourage rural communities. We want to encourage the 15-minute walkable city where we can jam as many people as possible in there. And so this is one of the strategic growth goals that the governor of the state of Colorado has set out. Less infrastructure. Less roads. Really? Really? I don't remember voting on that. Reduce development pressures in agricultural and open space areas and discourage sprawl. The term sprawl means development away from the city. They've given it that horrible name, sprawl. My God, it's sprawl. What that is people fleeing the city. If you think you're safer in Denver than you are in Douglas County, raise your hand. I'm pretty certain you're still at 10 and 2 if you're driving down the road, because ain't nobody in Douglas County thinks that they are worse off from a public safety standpoint than Denver. And yet, what do these folks from Denver and Boulder want to do? Have a statewide policy that forces you to live in Denver and Boulder. Here's another one. This is another priority, state growth goal. Promote and expand frequent, reliable, and safe. They don't use the word transportation because that means cars. Transit service that aligns with housing goals. Transit. They want more bike lanes and more light and heavy rail. A texter came in here and said, hey, take a look at the Front Range Passenger Rail District. I have no doubt in my mind that these big government, my job is to leave my mark on my community, wingnuts on the left, want to invest billions in a giant suckhole called rail between Pueblo and Fort Collins. It would be super cool and neat for the 15 riders that use it on a regular basis. And every once in a while, someone else will take it for a neat little trip. But last time I checked, RTD wasn't scrambling to figure out how to spend all of their surplus. They are begging people to ride RTD. They're begging so much. They've said, we won't even charge you anymore. We realize you weren't paying before and we weren't paying to enforce that, but we're just now going to declare it free and then you can ride it. We want to take this model and apply it on a multi-billion-dollar level to rail up I-25 from Pueblo to Fort Collins. And that's what's now a priority, according to the governor of the state of Colorado. Here's another, the magic language. Listen to this thing. Improve access to economic mobility. Economic mobility by providing more affordable and attainable housing to rent or own options and transportation for people currently unable to afford to live in high opportunity neighborhoods. What in the hell is a high opportunity neighborhood? With connection to high quality services that, and this is the catch-all phrase, folks, that help people achieve their goals. Which goals? What goals are they trying to achieve? Is it to live near quality schools? Because then they're moving out of DPS range, right?
What if my goals are to stay away from the crime?
No, I'm sorry, you can't. That goal is
dealing.
not honored.
What about that?
What if your goal is to not live in a city? That's not an honorable goal.
What if the goal is that I want to have some land and property around where I have the actual house? What about that?
Selfish, Billy.
Oh, you're right.
Your demand for land and space between you and your neighbors is selfish, and it is it's going to lead to the death of the cities and ultimately the planet Earth.
Obviously. I'm such an awful person.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back into my
corner. For those who are freaked out by the congestion out there, like we're becoming overpopulated, please take a moment and just drive left to right through a state called Wyoming. Just do that once and then report back about all the overpopulation. And that's just one state. Here's the one, though, where I'm hopeful this translated into action in the legislation. This is on page 4 of 6. Ensure that state processes are effective and efficient, responsive to community needs, and reduce paperwork and time burdens. Okay, Daddy likes some of those words. Here's the next part. Reform policies that unnecessarily drive up costs and add barriers to public infrastructure, transport, and local housing. So read that again. Reform policies that unnecessarily drive up costs to local housing development projects. That tells me, legislature, you need to fix the construction defect laws out there. If you are a law firm or attorneys that base your existence on crushing developers with your, hey, this stair is half an inch too short lawsuits, buckle up, folks, because the governor, I think, has just thrown down the gauntlet and demanded that the legislature get rid of that kind of garbage. I don't know what you're going to do to make money, but it's coming. This is the executive order that the governor just put out. It has gotten really, really soft soap treatment from the media so far. I don't see anyone asking the governor, why do you speed up the process by which local governments will lose control? Why do you have state governments doing an inventory of the monies that are spent at the local government? What will you do with that? Governor Polis, do you intend to demand that if any local government takes state taxpayer money, and by the way, their residents are all state taxpayers, that they bend to the state's views of what should take place with housing? Where's that question? It just doesn't take place. 303-696-1971 is our number. Listen, I do want to shift gears a little bit too, because this is really starting to piss me off. There was a clip that we played, and I'll play it. I'll have Billy play it again right here from KDVR. Do we still have that thing available, man? I got the hang on. I'll talk through it. There's a case that is now 4 years old, and it is a prosecution of 3 police officers and I think 2 paramedics. And if I'm wrong on the numbers, please forgive me. The Attorney General's office was assigned by the governor in one of those frenetic post-George Floyd, oh my God, we better look like we're doing something here, prosecutions. The Attorney General really didn't provide any new evidence or information. They just went out and hired 2 experts that sang the song they wanted to sing and brought them before a grand jury, and then asked the grand jury to indict these officers and paramedics on a certain number of charges. Now, I'll talk with you about sort of the sleight of hand and voodoo that's taking place in the motion to dismiss a couple of those charges when we come back from a break. But to set the stage, take a listen to this coverage by the Super Rob Lowe out of KDVR.
Charges against two Aurora police officers related to the death of Elijah McClain have been reduced, but it's not likely to have a big impact on the case or any potential sentence if the cops are convicted. Problem Solvers investigative reporter Rob Lowe joins us now to explain. Rob.
Erica, this case is being prosecuted by the Colorado Attorney General's office, and last week it filed a motion to dismiss counts against each of the officers that are known as sentence enhancers. The prosecutor called the charges redundant as to what those two officers already face. It's been 4 years since three police officers stopped Elijah McClain while the 23-year-old was walking home from a convenience store wearing a ski mask. He had broken no laws, but would wind up dead after two paramedics allegedly overdosed McClain with ketamine at the behest of the officers. It's been 2 years since the five men were indicted for McClain's death, and the first trial for two of those cops starts next month. But those two men, Aurora police officer Randy Rodema and former officer Jason Rosenblatt, will no longer face sentence enhancement counts.
Turns out those counts were unnecessary, but here's the part that gets me. They were unnecessary at the time of indictment.
Fox 31 legal analyst George Brauchler says the charges never made much sense since they were unlikely to add any prison time if the two men were convicted. Both are already facing reckless manslaughter, criminally negligent homicide, and assault. And it's the assault that carries the most time, 5 to 16 years. And it's the assault count that was tied to the sentence enhancement counts.
So the charge that the prosecutors dumped the sentencing enhanced counts on already had that built into it anyway. They never needed it. And so what I think the public should know is the two charges that tie them to the cause of death are actually the least of the problems these officers face. The biggest charge against them is the assault causing serious bodily injury, not death. That's the charge.
That assault charge carries more prison time because it requires intent. Manslaughter or negligent homicide don't. The two officers go on trial September 15th. A third officer faces a separate trial in October for putting McClain in a chokehold. The two paramedics go on trial in November. Rob Lowe, Fox 31.
Not so much intent as knowing conduct, which Rob's right. It's a mens rea issue that distinguishes the two from recklessness and negligence. It doesn't necessarily have to be intent. It could certainly be knowing, as is the case with second-degree assault. Listen, when we come back, I'm going to talk you through this. If you read the pleadings, and I don't expect you have, I have, there's some stuff going on here, and there's some sleight of hand going on by the AG's office to talk to us directly because they can't do it through the media, and to try to discourage us from concluding that they overcharged this thing unnecessarily to begin with. That's just not my conclusion. It's a very interesting case here, and we'll talk about it when we come back. I want to tell you about my dentist, though, because Daddy liked the treatment that he gets. I don't know why I keep saying that. At Twin Aspen Dental, because doctors Richter and Snyder, they're the bomb, man. I found them, and this is how it works in the radio. You should know this. Before I'll read for someone or endorse something, if it's anything at all that I can experience firsthand, I'm going to go do that, whether it's to meet with the person, I talk with the company folks. If it's something like Twin Aspen Dental, I will go and they will do the work on my mouth. And so I went down there. This is a while ago now. And they did the normal routine once every 6 months, cleaning and checkup and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are fantastic. I laughed. There were no tears. I felt stress-free. I love these people. Doctors Richter and Snyder are not just subject matter experts in dentistry. They're subject matter experts in patient care. I mean, they're just fantastic. And so I said, hey, I'll keep coming back and doing this thing. We've had them in studio. We need to do it again, especially for that segment. What's the weirdest thing you've pulled out of somebody's mouth? I mean, some of the stories, they're gag worthy, but they are awesome. But come be a part of that family. It's so easy to do. They're located at about Parker Road and Stroh, right by Lehman Academy. Easy to get to, northeast, south, or west. You can also check them out at Twin Aspen Dental Center, all traditional spellings, 4 words jammed together, twinaspendentalcenter.com. I suggest take a break from your current dentist. If you're not in love with your current dentist, and you're just like, I've been going to this guy or this gal for years and it's just easy and convenient. That's okay. That's okay. Take a little bit of a breather. Just take a knee for once. Pick up the phone and dial 303-841-7466. 303-841-7466 and say, you know what, George talked me into this. I want to do a routine cleaning. And they can do all the heavy lifting, the Invisalign, the dental implants, the bridges, fill in the blankages. They do all that. But just sign up this one time for the routine cleaning and exam. And I'm telling you, you're going to come away and go, I get it, man. I totally get it. It's TwinAspenDentalCenter.com. Hey, when we come back, I'm going to continue to talk to you about this case that's being prosecuted by the AG's office. Just give you my own impressions. I'm certainly no genius on this stuff, but I've done a couple things in the criminal law, and we'll talk about when we come back. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Wanted to tell you about this thing. We just heard the sound for this from a KDVR report. It's something that happened last week, but there was no press release I'm aware of from the AG's office pushing this thing out. But in the prosecution of 2 of the 3 police officers, you remember the Judge Warner, who, by the way, is a career prosecutor prior to being a judge. And this guy knows criminal procedure and criminal law. He doesn't need to be educated on these things. Dude has been doing this for decades. Mark has been around a long time, and he's going to run a pretty tight trial. That's my guess. But he divided up this case. Remember, the AG's office wanted to try everybody at once because it looks horrible, right? Like some of the facts of this are just disturbing. If you can point at a whole table full of people and say they're all guilty, it's harder for the jury to distinguish. So the judge said, no, thank you. We're going to do the paramedics, and then we're going to do 2 of the officers, and then we're going to do 1 of the officers separately. Well, the 2 officers in this trial, I think is the one scheduled to start next month, are Randy Rodema and Jason Rosenblatt. They were 2 of the officers involved in the untimely and tragic death of Elijah McClain. If you'll recall, Dave Young, who was the elected district attorney, Democrat, out of Adams County, got the medical examiner's report, amongst other things. And the medical examiner said, I can't tell you why Elijah McClain died. That, to me, and again, this isn't me, the 28-year criminal justice guy. This is me just, trying to understand the phrase reasonable doubt. That feels like it's it, doesn't it? Like, I can't tell you why this guy died, but let's blame these guys for it. That's tough. That's tough. So Dave Young, armed with what we call facts in the business, said, I don't think I have a reasonable likelihood of success at trial. That's an ethical standard that all real prosecutors are bound by. So it doesn't get charged. Now, nothing happens, right? Like Elijah McClain's parents or mom, it stands on a street corner with one other person, and it gets very, very little coverage by the Post. And then George Floyd happens, and all of a sudden this thing catches fire. And you know that the governor will not act until a change.org petition reaches a couple million people. They don't have to be Coloradans. They don't even have to be real people. Just the change.org petition has to reach a couple million. And it did. And so he then said, well, my goodness. And I'm just giving you the background, without ever reading a single police report, without ever picking up the phone and talking to fellow elected Democrat Dave Young about why he didn't pull the trigger on a prosecution, without doing any of that, he quickly handed this hot potato off to Phil Weiser, who, as you know, is an expert in the area of criminal law and criminal prosecution, having never taught it or done it in his entire career. And said, hey, Phil, you investigate this. So Phil, of course, quickly used this PR opportunity for PR purposes and announced, we're going to get a thorough investigation of this, which suggests that the last one wasn't. And that's okay. It's insulting, but he's insulting another elected Democrat. So my guess is the investigation yielded nothing, because the only evidence that was presented to the grand jury that was different than what Dave Young considered was Phil went out and his team handpicked 2 experts that would come in and say, well, we think that the cause of death was probably this. Now, of course, they couldn't have been there for the autopsy. They have to rely merely on reports and pictures and other things, lab results. But they came and they changed the tune. And by the way, if you looked at that indictment, and we discussed it on air at length, it doesn't come out and say the paramedics did it or the cops did it. In fact, it really suggests that the ketamine did it. Oh, the cops didn't inject the ketamine. Nonetheless, Phil's team goes to the grand jury. And I know a little bit about grand juries. I've only picked about 8 of them. Nope, exactly 8 of them. 1 for every year I was the district attorney. I picked it myself. And that is, the grand jury does not come to the courtroom armed with a knowledge of the substantive criminal law. They rely upon the district attorney to say, here's this evidence we'd like you to consider. Is there any you'd like to consider? Rarely do they ever take us up on that. And then you say, here is a universe of charges that we want you to consider in applying these facts to this law. So there's no way the grand jury, the statewide grand jury, showed up and said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Attorney General person, are sentencing enhancers appropriate here? That's not how it works. The AG's office approached them and said, here are some charges: criminally negligent homicide and reckless manslaughter. Criminally negligent homicide, as Judge Warner pointed out in his order, is a lesser included offense. Now, the fact that the grand jury had to give the indictment probably makes the charging of that not redundant, but maybe even necessary. But when they went for the second-degree assault charge, by definition, it's a crime of violence. And yet, they still charge these two sentencing enhancers. That wasn't by accident. It was a mistake, but it was an on-purpose mistake, in my opinion. I don't know that they knew it. I don't know that anybody on that team knew how the law worked, but here's how it plays out. This is why it got dumped last week under the cover of darkness. Because the defense said, hang on, Judge, we'd like a bill of particulars from the man, from the government, to explain to us how our specific clients caused the death of this young man, Elijah McClain. How did they cause the death? And I think what they're hinging upon is there is no good evidence that they caused the death of Elijah McClain. That's not what the experts have said. So the judge says, you know what? I'm not going to order a bill of particulars as to criminally negligent homicide. I'm not going to order it as to reckless manslaughter. It's really just manslaughter, but it's reckless. Instead, I'm going to order a bill of particulars as to the sentencing enhancers that they caused the death of this person in the performance or flight from or whatever of these other charges, these other felonies. Well, I presume the AG's office sat around and thought, well, this sucks because we don't really have a good theory. And frankly, we're not interested in putting pen to paper and binding us to some theory that may turn out to shift in trial or we may be stuck with. So rather than fight that battle, rather than give up that theory, that information under the bill of particulars that was ordered, they decided, you know what? If we dismiss those unnecessary charges, we don't have to give a bill of particulars. We don't have to provide that information to the other side. And that is exactly what they did. So they filed a motion. Now, this motion, a motion to dismiss sentencing enhancing charges, in my experience, a motion to dismiss any charges, typically takes the form of one page. And it is a paragraph that simply says the people of the state of Colorado, in the interests of justice or whatever. This thing right here, folks, I'm looking at is with the signature pages taken out. It's 3 pages of typed stuff. Now, there's a giant caption in there that, of course, lists all the people, some of whom have nothing to do with this case, but they're on here. Bunch of people, by the way, who I don't even know if they've been prosecutors in the state of Colorado for more than a cup of coffee, but it kind of doesn't matter when you get to the AG level. But they go through a long discussion of why they're dismissing this and why it makes no difference. They're not talking to Judge Warner in this pleading. That's who the pleading's for. It's for the court, but that's not who this pleading is for. This pleading is for you and it's for me. It's to communicate with the public in a way that they cannot by talking to the media. There are rules I've told you about before, 3.6 and 3.8, ethical rules that dictate what a prosecutor can, and even an attorney for 3.6, can and can't say that might poison the well in a future prosecution. Well, here's the deal, man. This trial is set for next month. The AG's office was desperate to have a conversation with Coloradans about why their dismissal of the charges wasn't controversial. In fact, those charges were completely unnecessary. And so they go through a description of the law to say the crime of violence count is a sentence enhancer, not a standalone offense. That's true, but Judge Warner knows that. They don't need to tell him that. It says generally a crime of violence enhancer must be separately pled in the indictment or information, and the jury must receive a special interrogatory. That's true, but they don't need to tell Judge Warner that. He knows that. And then it says where a criminal statute requires that the trial court sentence the defendants in accordance with the provision of the violent crime statute, like the one they charged here, they got the grand jury to, the legislature has already effective required mandatory sentencing. So these things were unnecessary. But they don't just dismiss it based on that. They're like, you know what? People might want to know. Why in the hell did you charge this to begin with? Why are we dismissing that now? And they give us an explanation because they do it in a footnote. And again, that footnote is not to the judge. The judge is an expert in criminal law and criminal procedure. This is to you and me and the media. And this is how they phrase it. As is often the practice with complex cases such as this, the indictment was overly inclusive with the knowledge that redundant charges could be dismissed closer to trial. Pardon me? Pardon me? Redundant charges? In Colorado? I don't think so. Now, in some states where the only vehicle to charge a defendant is through the grand jury, I can see that within 48 to 72 hours of an arrest, rushing to a grand jury with evidence means, man, you got to go super aggressive on the charges. And when all of the investigation is completed, then you can figure things out. But the reason that this is BS is that grand jury didn't render their indictment until 2 years after this case was done being investigated. 2 years. And now, 4 years after Elijah McClain dies on that street in Aurora, 4 years, now the AG's office says, well, we knew at the time we asked the grand jury to indict that we were charging redundant charges here, and we knew we'd have the ability to dismiss them. They do not connect in their pleading in any way to the fact that the judge ordered them to provide a theory of their case, in essence, a bill of particulars, specifics to the defense about how the sentencing enhancer applies here. So this is what happened, folks. The AG's office asked the grand jury to indict on charges that were completely unnecessary. They didn't think about it, care about it, or worry about it until a judge ordered them to provide information to the defense for the purposes of providing a fair defense about those redundant charges. And then they announced, you know what, this is pretty routine. Not in my experience, not in the state of Colorado. We don't indict in a hurry. We don't over-indict and then just say, you know what, let's just charge as many damn things as possible. We'll figure it out a month before trial. That's not how we did things in the 18th Judicial District. But here at the state level, the media, because they just don't know, they read this pleading and they go, oh, I guess that makes sense, especially if it's routine. It's not routine, folks. There is something going on here. Now, listen, I wanted to tell you, too, what I said in that interview with Rob is totally legitimate, and that is that the manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide charges, even though they're the charges that try to tie these guys to death. And my guess is the theory is going to be, wow, but for their rough manhandling and unwarranted manhandling of Elijah McClain on the sidewalk, there would have been no medical intervention. But for them summoning the paramedics, there would have been no medical intervention. But for them telling the paramedics that this guy engaged in that excited delirium, which is they're going to claim is contradicted by the body cam evidence, there would have been no administration of ketamine. And it was the administration of ketamine that killed him, not what the police did. However, but for the police, there would have been no. That's got to be their argument. That's their argument. But those convictions get them probation. They don't get them prison. Those are probation eligible charges. So instead, they say, what's the biggest hammer we can crush these guys with? It's not the cause of death. It's we're going to claim serious bodily injury. And if they knowingly cause serious bodily injury, we're looking at 5 to 16 years mandatory prison for each one of these guys. That's why they go after that big charge. And that's the way in which an assault conviction that is disconnected from death can actually lead to more prison than the conduct that's tied by their allegations to the cause of death. This is it's not a complicated case or complex case, no matter what they say. It's a difficult case because they're trying to blame the cops for causing the death of Elijah McClain. And you can already see how this is going to play out in court. This is why the cases had to be separated. The cops are going to go, holy smokes, man, we ain't doctors. I could tell the paramedics, I want you to stick a needle in his eye. They're the medical providers. They don't do it. We didn't tell them that they needed to overdose him on ketamine, which is what they did. They gave him an extra therapeutic injection of ketamine. We didn't tell him that. And the paramedics are going to say, sweet mother of goodness, there's no chance we even show up on scene, but for the fact that they call for us. And then they told us things that they knew we'd rely upon in making decisions about administering ketamine. And we wouldn't have administered ketamine, but for what they told us. So you've got these two groups that are, and I'm not saying they're not responsible for Elijah McClain's death, their combined conduct. But there's a difference between civil responsibilities for someone's death. And by the way, the city has paid out $8 quadrillion, 40% of which went to the attorneys, $8 quadrillion for the death of Elijah McClain. There's a difference between that and using the awesome power of the government to try to incarcerate people for claims beyond a reasonable doubt in an environment where even the medical examiner says, I don't know what killed this kid. This right here, you want to talk about politically driven prosecution? That's what this feels like. This feels like a politically driven prosecution. This feels like a prosecution that Phil felt obligated to do because the governor dumped it on him, and Phil wants to be governor. Phil wanted to be reelected at the time. Do you remember they kept pushing this case out? So we didn't get this resolved before November. This is a tough damn case, folks, and not because the facts are complicated. The facts are easy. A bunch of people got together and did things that they shouldn't have done. And they led to that combined activity led to the death of someone. Are they culpable for it? Civilly, absolutely. Criminally, I don't know how they're going to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. They're going to have to count on a jury that is emotionally exercised against the cops for what happened. That's a real risk. But only one of the 12 has to sit there and think to themselves, I hate what they did. I hate the outcome. They shouldn't have done it. Elijah McClain should still be alive, but by God, they did not prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt these guys killed this kid in violation of the criminal law. That's the risk. But you've got this pleading now, and I don't know, man. I wish that we were in an environment where the mainstream media was more curious. I love Rob Lowe for the questions he asked and him seeing this for what it was. I wish we had them that were more intellectually curious and I'm going to defend him here, had the resources to go do the deep dive and do the investigation on this stuff, but they don't. And the easy out for Phil is he doesn't have to answer questions on a pending case, and I wouldn't either. But they've gone to the lengths of putting it in the pleading so that you would read it and you would be like, oh, nothing to see here, no big deal. Well, there is something to see here, and it is kind of a big deal. And the question should be asked, why did you do it this way? But we're not going to get to hear that until the outcome of the case. And my guess is if they get a conviction on anything, they're going to George Bush this thing and declare mission accomplished, victory, and move on. That's my guess. Hey, listen, that's a long-winded diatribe by a guy who is frustrated by the politicized use of criminal justice and prosecutorial authority, whether it's against the president or it's against police officers or anybody. Frustrated, man, frustrated. This is not how government is supposed to work. Government is supposed to make decisions based on the law and facts and not on political wins. And that feels like that's where we're at the local and the federal level anymore. Listen, I'm going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back. We'll wrap up this hour. If you've got calls, you want to tell me how wrong I am, you can do it at 303-696-1971. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to have on super reporter Dave Migoya another update just based off of the story he broke last week and the reporting. Things are a-changing, folks. Love to have that conversation with Dave and you. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Getting modeling advice from Mark Crowley sitting next to me. I said I will not go shirtless, not until I lose some more weight, which is probably post-marathon. So, folks, if you're watching on the YouTubes or the Rumble, you know that you can count on me to be dressed at least through the end of October. November, I don't know, pre-Thanksgiving, who knows what I end up doing. Let me do this before we cut away, though. Can I tell you about Mitch Flory at the Art of Granite? Mitch is that combination of patriot, American patriot, craftsman, entrepreneur, the kind of guy that you would be proud to have working inside your most precious possession, and that's your home, where your family lives. Your kitchen countertop, your bathroom countertop, those are the most eye-catching features, easiest things to fix if you want to upgrade, and Mitch is the guy to do it. They have everything, quartz, granite, marble. I presume, can you make a crystal countertop? We should ask Kim K. We'll ask the governor for her number. He can do it if it's possible to do it. But here's the other thing. He loves you. He loves you because you listen to the show and you're a 710 listener like him. He gives you the wholesale prices for nothing. But if you say you're a 710 listener, he will throw in the bathroom countertop with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you're only doing one of the rooms, he'll throw in the kitchen sink for free. You just got to dial 303-386-5919. 303-386-5919, or check him out at theartofgranite.com, theartofgranite.com. That's Mitch Floria. Give him a shout. Now, listen, when we come back, we're going to be joined by super reporter David Migoya from the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazette. He's going to update us on the changes that keep happening. This guy, I can't believe he doesn't have a Pulitzer, single-handedly changing the judicial branch and how we govern it. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Welcome to the final hour of the George Show on 710 KNUS. Listeners everywhere, many of them texting in, some of them formerly on this station, can't help but listen to the show and continue to tweet out their approval, ? I don't know. It's just fun to hear from others what some of those folks, I love it. I love it. That just tells me we're resonating with some. And the reason we get to resonate with some is because we cover the cutting edge things that the mainstream media typically stays away from, at least at the level that we're at. And to help us continue a conversation that he started, no joke, a newspaper and several years ago, is super reporter for the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazette, Dave Migoya. Sir, two things before we begin. Three things.
Morning, George.
One, thanks for joining us. Two, Billy has ordered me to congratulate you on the Spanish Women's World Cup victory. Congratulations.
Viva España, viva España, vamos. Those girls, something, man. Absolutely incredible. A lot of fun.
I lost interest, honestly, after the U.S. got eliminated, and then it got all super political with them. And I'm like, what is happening to sports? And then my mind was taken off of that misery by the fact that our New York Yankees suck. I mean, what's happening?
There was a redemption this week when I got to see the Spanish national team win the Women's World Cup, because my Yankees, I was tuning into the Yankees-Boston, which is usually a really exciting series. Yep. It means something. But you got the two bottom teams duking it out, and basically to figure out who's going to be laying on their back at the end of the season, because they're both laying down.
We know now because they got swept.
It was terrible. It was so terrible.
It's like watching two old drunks fight in an alley, and you only stop to see, well, one of them's got to win, right?
Yeah, that's right. Somebody's got to stand up.
It feels like feels like Booney's days are over.
You know what, though? If old man Steinbrenner were still around, the house would have been swept clean months ago. He would have been
Billy
apoplectic. He would have lost it if he would have seen the Yankees get swept by the Red Sox. It would have been the end of everything.
Billy said the exact same thing. He's like, the kids, and he was broadening it to say, it seems like the kids of all the greats end up always taking it down a notch, right? Like whether it's the Trump kids or the Steinbrenner kids, for whatever reason, we can't. What was it? Oh, Al Davis. They just can't seem to replicate the model for success. But on to greener pastures. Listen, you came on last week, nice enough to talk to me about something that inspired me to write a column about it, and it really got me exercised. And then you followed up on this with some action ? That it may be taken. Now you had revealed. Why don't you just recap? What is it you discovered that you wrote about, and what's happened since?
Well, last week you and I talked. I had a story in the papers about how basically 1 in every 6 judges in our state, these are district and county court judges, had not filed their personal financial disclosure statements that particular year. Some of them for many years. These are records that by law they and a number of other elected officials, including up to our governor, have to file every year. You did as a DA. Letting voters know where their financial attachments and obligations were, theirs, their spouse or partner, and any of their kids that are under 18. So this way, voters, people, lawyers for that matter, litigants, can take a look and see if there's a potential conflict of interest. Does the judge take up cases or causes or decisions that might influence the outcome that could personally benefit them? So these documents are pretty important. Every year you put them out there. This is where I have my mortgage. Here's where all my stocks and holdings are, et cetera. So we looked at the state's 358 judges and found out that roughly 1 in 6, it was over almost 60 of them, had not filed these disclosures this past year, and some of them for many years. And then on top of that, all the senior judges, -1, so there were 50 senior judges, 49 of them not only had not been filing with the Secretary of State as they're required by law, but hadn't done so for years and years, decades for some of them. And some of them, even before they retired to be a senior judge, weren't filing. So I exposed all that. And then on Monday, yesterday, we had the story that disclosed that the state's Judicial Discipline Commission, these are the guys that mete out the discipline for misconduct, were asking a lot of questions about all these filings and non-filings. So I won't say investigation, I'll say inquiry with the Secretary of State. Now, that was actually really unusual for us to be able to write that story because this commission, by law, their work is secret. They're not allowed to comment. They're not allowed to disclose unless there's an actual public discipline, as we had with our former Chief Justice recently, Nathan Coates.
Right.
That sort of public outcome is the end of, that's when you find out what they were doing. So this was unusual because they made their request in writing to the Secretary of State's office. And since it wasn't a formal investigation, that email to the Secretary of State wasn't a public record. So I simply made the open record request, wondering if these guys were poking around. And sure enough, there's all the emails saying, here's a list of 120 judges. We want to know their entire, not just what I wrote, their entire filing history. So what they've been finding out is some of these judges I wrote about actually hadn't had filings going way back compared to what I was writing about, because some of them may have said, oops, I missed the last 4 years, I'll file this year. And that's all I cared about was what was the most recent. They've gone back to each one of these folks since they went on the bench and are finding big gaps in there.
It's interesting too, because it's not just some administrative box checking function. It's serious enough that the legislators that put this into law have also called it a misdemeanor crime, punishable by up to $5,000 in a fine. So this is not a nothing thing. And while the statute of limitations on misdemeanors runs at about 18 months, typically, it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be some kind of an investigation for the things that are, and I'm not sure I know the difference between inquiry and investigation, other than the length of the word, but
yeah, well, honest, I was dancing around the technicality because it is a very technical thing for the commission to say it's investigating rather than just poking around. So I wanted to be careful on which word I use. That's all.
I found it interesting too, when I started to write the column, how much emphasis is placed on the front door aspect of becoming an attorney, not a judge, but an attorney in Colorado, that requires you to demonstrate a commitment to your ability to follow the law, meet deadlines. I mean, all that stuff is baked into all of the ethics rules and stuff that governs the admission to the practice. And yet at the highest levels of the law, which I think is arguably becoming a judge, that stuff just seems to have been shrugged off like, oh, did we have to file? What? Did I miss that for 4 years in a row? That's amazing.
Yeah, there seems to be a bit of disparity in how much one side, the judicial side, has to pay attention to things as opposed to a lawyer. Because I think you pointed out in your column that if a lawyer misses out on certain things, they'll suspend your license that very day.
Summarily suspended. There's no like, hey, did you forget to get your CLEs done? Or did you forget to pay your dues? You get a reminder and then kaboom. What I don't get is, do these judges not get reminders more than annually? Do they need reminders more than annually? I don't know the answer.
Well, they only get them once a year from the Judicial Department, typically in December, 6-page reminder. We noted in my story that apparently one of the chief justices in the jurisdictions up in the 17th in Adams County, right before my stories were coming out, somebody put the word to him, because I never spoke to the guy. He put reminders out to all his judges here in August to say, look, guys, you need to remember
I think it was Don
make sure you're up to date. Yeah, it was Don Quick.
Don's a former elected DA. He was the number 3 guy in the AG's office a while ago, I think under Salazar. I mean, smart dude, good dude. I think that's the right approach to take. Unnecessary that he needs to play camp counselor to the other judges up there, but nonetheless, he did it. The other part that's interesting to me, David, and I don't know if you've had the chance to get any further feedback from them, but this Secretary of State notion that, yes, we're sitting on all of this information. We know that they've failed to file, but we don't take any action until somebody comes along to make a formal complaint. That is so completely inconsistent with every other person that has a required filing. I didn't experience that. I'll give you a quick example. When I was running for DA the first time, they have something called a major contributor. And you have to disclose that within a very short period of time, like 24 hours. And I get that, right? Like if you've got someone out there, Daddy Warbucks, backing your campaign with big dollars, that should be disclosed. Well, I was the daddy Warbucks. I wrote myself a check for $1,000. I disclosed it through the routine within 30 days thing. Nobody had to complain. They instantly found me in violation. And because I'd done $1,000 one day, and then I did $1,000 another day, and I'd violated it, the first one they give you just a warning. The second one, they hit you with a fine. And I'm like, hang on. I get it. I violated the rules about disclosing me to the public. Like, I'm the one that gave the money. I'm like, how about an exception? They came back, automatically punched me with a fine and said, no, you already got your warning. Now, keep in mind, the warning came at the exact same time as the fine because both violations occurred within the same reporting period. My only point in highlighting that is this is an office that does not wait for complaints. It acts immediately and automatically. Why not with the judges?
I don't disagree. What you're talking about are the campaign finance laws, which which get a greater deal of scrutiny because the number of filings you as a candidate are making it's an enormous number. You're doing them every week, every quarter, so on and so on during the campaign season. A lot of people are looking, a lot of people are checking. That happens routinely. What you're talking about here is a space of documents that nobody seems to bother to check on at all because they're just this routine once a year, let people know where we're at. Has nothing to do with elections. As you pointed out last week, however, when you filed your personal financial disclosures as the DA and you were running for office, that's one of the documents your opponents take a look at. They want to see where your investments are and who you're tied to. So, that's not atypical, but the fact that there's no enforcement on this, there's not even a method for the Secretary of State's system. And now I'm just talking about electronically to acknowledge the receipt of the documents, because we had a number of judges who put in the wrong email address. Now, what I can't figure out is if you miss by one letter, how does that email not bounce back? Mine usually do when I get it wrong and the email doesn't exist.
Brilliant question. That's a brilliant question.
And there's no way to check the records on that because bounce back is incumbent on a system, not a particular program within Secretary of State's office. But at least have something that acknowledges, yes, we have received your financial disclosures. Thank you. You're on time, or whatever if we have any other questions, we'll reach out, whatever the deal is. But that's not even in place. So what we've got now are 120 judges who are staring down the barrel of discipline from the commission if the commission goes that route, which it very well can.
We're talking with David Migoya, super investigative reporter for Denver and Colorado Springs Gazette and Colorado Politics. The other thing is that if you wanted to Cora the judge's email to say, well, show me the one where you got it kicked back, even if it ended up in junk, the response from the Judicial Department would be, we're not subject to Cora. We've defined ourselves out of it.
And not exactly, George. I mean, I was able to do that on a couple of judges when they asked that they had used the wrong email address. And I said, I appreciate the explanation. I did. And they were good enough to find them in their system. So it's not Cora.
Wonderful.
It's PAIR, and I won't try to explain what that stands for, but PAIRR. It's nearly a duplicate, of Cora. But, you can still get the emails, the personal emails of the judge, should they say they filed. And, of course, they would have to have used their official email to do that filing. Some of them did. Some of them put them in with their honoraria disclosures, those things you get paid for speeches and weddings and whatever.
They're making those.
And they have to file those. And they did them together in only a couple. Secretary of State only saw the first filing. They didn't see the attachment. It got lost in the shuffle. So those were minor.
And those don't bug me. I don't think those bother the public. The idea that, hey, you made the college try, even if there might have been some other efforts on your part of the Secretary of State's to fix it.
Right.
I'm not bothered by that at all. I'm bothered by the ones who are like, oh, are we supposed to file something?
Well, yeah. And, we're not talking about a judge forgetting 1 year, maybe two. I mean, we had members of the discipline commissions. There are two. There's a statewide and there's one in Denver. We had members of those commissions who missed their filings for 4 or 5 successive years.
And they're the ones that are now doing the deeper dive on these 120 judges, including themselves?
Well, they would. One of them would be, that's Bonnie McLean out of Arapahoe County. She's a member of the commission. She's up to date, according to what she told us, and caught up with those 4 years of missed filings. And now, ostensibly, she could be sitting on the panel that's deciding whether to discipline the other 119.
Presume she's going to have to recuse. I know Bonnie. I like Bonnie. She's a good judge. She does nice work, but please, man, that's crazy. The other part of this is there are ethical obligations for attorneys who are aware of judges or attorneys who have violated the ethical rules. And now I'm starting to wonder if I'm not on the hook for this, because I'm a licensed attorney in Colorado, but I know two people who absolutely are licensed attorneys in Colorado who touch these cases. One of them's named Jenna Griswold. The other one's named Phil Weiser. Now, Phil's office does the beg off thing with you where they're like, well, until it's referred by the Secretary of State's office, we're powerless to do anything. Like everybody's like, you can't trigger my superpowers until somebody does something. And I'm like, where else in law enforcement is that true, right? Like if the cops are driving down the street and they become aware of a crime, they don't have to wait for someone to complain about it to take action. And yet somehow the AG's office, which you have found out from them, have a monopoly on the enforcement of this misdemeanor law, have said, well, we don't have any referral from the Secretary of State. Yes, we're aware of it. Yes, we've read your article. And yes, we're ethically obligated to report these things to the bar, but we can't actually do anything until Jenna does something. And Jenna says, well, I can't actually do anything until someone complains. Am I missing something?
No, I think you described it pretty well. But in Weiser's case, at the time that I reached out to him, I was merely asking on the violations, should they exist? I wasn't pointing out and providing a list. That's not what we do. I didn't call him up and say, hey, we're writing a story. You should treat this as a complaint. It's merely to say when it comes to a violation of non-filing, how is it that this gets prosecuted? Who's the authority to take care of it? So what they were offering me was a general explanation. So after the story ran, it's entirely possible, I don't know, that office decided to take that list of 120 judges that we published in the paper and decided to do its own inquiry. I don't know if there is one or not. I have zero idea on that. Same thing with Griswold. I mean, that office, by the rules, really compiles all the information. We're not talking about election law now. Your points are valid there. This is just merely, you need to file this every year with this office, and if you don't, it's a misdemeanor. Well, that office's job, they say, is merely to kind of gather it all together into a pile. It's not to kind of go through the homework and decide who didn't hand in their paperwork. Somebody else has to say that, look, I tried to get it and it's not there. Well, okay, so it's possible now that I've gone through this exercise with Secretary of State that they're doing their own inquiry to file the complaint. And, so all this stuff comes after the fact. But before the fact, it was very clear. Nobody was checking.
It's a very forgiving system for those at the highest echelons of the law and not so much for the worker bees. I mean, if I don't get the CLEs done, I'm required to in 3 years, I don't get a practice law. If I don't pay my dues on time, and the dues, by the way, don't fund the judiciary to work. The dues merely exist for all their other special projects. But if you don't pay those, I'm so sorry, you get summarily suspended. But we have this thing where nobody seems to care. Nobody except David Migoya has seemed to look. I am anxious to see the judiciary police itself, or at least tolerate the legislature, if it's willing to do something to make them compliant, because it feels like there's a two-tiered system here for compliance. And I put that in the column. Someone's going to show up to court and answer on an expired plates charge. They didn't get their plates renewed. Well, that judge that could be fining them for that error could be someone who hasn't filed their disclosures in years. That doesn't feel like hypocrisy, does it? I mean, does that feel like hypocrisy?
Yeah, well, it feels like a very uncomfortable situation, I'll say that. And I don't disagree with you that there ought to be a policing method. At the minimum, you would think, and I don't mean to lay on them like this, but the state court administrator's office. This is the office that essentially runs all the administrative duties of the entire court system in Colorado. That at least they would be just with a little checklist checking off every judge that's filed their disclosures, because, like you say, these are the folks that wear the robes. They're the ones that carry the highest degree of respect. You should be a model of abiding by the law. You would think.
I agree. I don't want to be heard, though, to be saying that these are somehow people that are unscrupulous or lack the character to be a judge.
No, of course not.
I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying we now clearly have a system that wink, wink, nudges, nudges for the biggest people in the criminal justice system. And for everyone else, it's a different level of accountability. And that just can't instill faith in the system. That just can't be the kind of thing that makes sense. I love that you're out there doing this. And as we wrap up every interview, I always want to ask, and I hope you'll give us something here, but what's next, man? What's next? You've been doing this now for 3 years. You keep finding more and more things. This onion is the size of Mile High Stadium that you keep pulling back. What's left?
Question. Sometimes I really have no answer. And you would think after 4 years, I mean, the first stories we wrote were back in July 2019 about what was going on in the judiciary. And look where we are now. It's surprising to me that it keeps going like this. Frankly, I'd rather be writing about something else. But as long as something keeps coming along, and I've little doubt that something might be coming along, I don't know, pay attention.
David, I don't think it's even arguable at this point, but for your individual efforts at the last paper and the Gazette, I don't know that we're having any conversations about these things, about the judicial branch. I don't know that there's been any censure. I don't know that there's been any movement towards reform. I don't know that any of this stuff is true, but for a guy who happens to represent the old school application of the First Amendment freedom of the press thing, man, I mean, I'm not just showering praise upon you because you're a friend, but who else is out there that can point to some change for an entire branch of government directly related to their reporting? I don't know who they are.
I appreciate that a lot, George. I'm just doing what I'm trained to do. You know, I've been doing this for 40 years. This is my 40th.
We're losing you just a little bit.
I New York. You know.
We're losing you a little bit, Dave, on your phone there. It sounds a little electronic-y, like maybe the judicial branch has hijacked your cell service. I don't know if that's true. All I wanted to do is to beg you to never focus your attention on talk radio. Please don't ever seek to pull back the onion that is talk radio, because it can only go bad for Billy and I.
Years ago, if you looked into my work when I was at the Denver Post, almost 20 plus years ago, I took a look at talk radio a little bit and did some writing on that. Look it up.
Oh, no, I'm scared. I don't want you to go back that direction, because things can only go poorly for Billy and I. I need the work, frankly. So please don't do that. Thank God we don't have to have transparency here. Listen, David Migoya, a super fan of the Yankees. I'm so sorry. I am too. Super fan of the Spanish women's team, the World Cup champions. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for the time this morning, man.
Always happy, George.
Thank you. Hey, I love talking to Dave Migoya. This, I'm telling you, you cannot overstate the impact a single reporter has had on an entire branch of state government. I mean, if you're looking for reasons to applaud what remains of old school mainstream media, it's Dave Migoya, man. I mean, this guy just keeps going. And my applause extends to the Gazette too, who basically is just like, tell us what we need to do to support you and to keep putting this out there. It's incredible stuff. We'll keep having that conversation too. Got some other things that I want to tease for you as we come back from this break, but not until I tell you about Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. It's home buying time. And this is my amateur opinion, folks. Interest rates, they are on the rise. They are north of 7% for the first time. And I think, what'd they say, like 20-ish years? It is only going to get more challenging to buy a home. And that means the market to sell your home is also going to become hyper competitive. You don't have to navigate these waters by yourself. I know there's 8 billion realtors out there, many of whom show up on park benches and RTD bus stops and all these things. You don't have to go that direction, or in your grocery cart. You just have to go with the tried and the true. That's Gay Ribble with the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. Gay has all the buyers. .com. That's just not a sentence. That's a website. It's a website that exemplifies the fact that they have over 14,000 buyers in waiting, people that have signed up for Gay, so that when your house gets listed, bam, they get the notice right away and they get to start fighting over the bids for it. They also can get you into that dream home, especially in this competitive market. They make guarantees that other realtors won't, like to sell your house in the time and for the dollar amount that you want. Otherwise, they make it right. You can reach out to Gay. Gay has the buyers.com. Gay is Gaye, has the buyers.com. I recommend just picking up the number that calls the team at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. have that conversation, enjoy the experience, the stress-free experience, and then call up and tell us how awesome it was. Stick around. We're going to finish up the show here with a couple segments dedicated to things you want to talk about, but a couple things I want to tease for the upcoming show. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to Dave Migoya, super reporter for the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazette. Listen, we could talk all day about judicial reform and what's great about the Colorado judiciary. And there is some stuff that's great about the Colorado judiciary, don't get me wrong. But there's definitely some needed reforms. Now, there was an article in the Post that was very, very unhappy with the idea that it sounds like twice as many prosecutors have been appointed to the bench, or at least former prosecutors, as there were defense attorneys. I wanted to comment on that. That requires a deeper dive for sure, because the reason for that and whether or not they're truly former prosecutors is kind of a big deal. And I want to take a look at that. It was based just off of the bio stuff from the governor's announcements, but that's worth looking at too. The judicial reform thing matters to me. It should matter to you if that's going to be what our last lines of defense for protection of constitutional rights against the government. Kind of a big one. But there's something else that caught my eye that was an article that was written that the libs have jumped all over. And it's an AP article called "A Right-Wing Sheriff's Group That Challenges Federal Law is Gaining Acceptance Around the Country." Against the background hum of the convention center, Dar Leaf settled into a club chair to explain the sacred mission of America's sheriffs, his bright blue eyes and warm smile belying the intensity of the cause. Quote, "The sheriff is supposed to be protecting the public from evil," the chief law enforcement officer for Berry County, Michigan, said during a break in the National Sheriff's Association 2023 conference in June. "When your government is evil or out of line, that's what the sheriff is there for, protecting them from that." And then they go on to talk about the other sheriffs that were there, some funding for the organization, and that the fact that they're pushing back on the enforcement of federal law. Now, fast forward here to the state of Colorado, and the chair of the state Democrat Party, his name's Shad Murab, and we'd love to get Shad on the radio here. I've made some efforts outside of the normal Billy channels to try to get that done, but Shad responded with a tweet, and he says, "We are seeing this right here in Colorado with extremist sheriffs disobeying the law and not enforcing life-saving gun safety measures, putting their far-right politics over their constituents. We're not going to take it. And we're putting these sheriffs on notice." Very dramatic. So I reached out to Shad, said, "Hey, I'd be happy to have this conversation with you on the air." And then in another response, I said, "Name the sheriffs who are refusing to enforce federal law." Because last time I checked, it was the Democrat-led state legislature that was trying to keep the Sheriff County Teller Sheriff, Teller County Sheriff. Yeah, there's a lot of words in there. What they really mean is the sheriff of Teller County. Woo! Mikesell, who we've had on this show. This guy was trying to use his jail in a completely lawful way to allow ICE agents to house crime-committing illegal aliens while they were awaiting deportation and other proceedings. And do you remember? It's the Democrats in the legislature that passed laws to try to prohibit him from doing that. They went to court to fight over his willingness to try to do this. So here it is that we've got the head of the state Democrat Party decrying the fact, using this article about sheriffs refusing to follow federal law as a bad thing, when all we've heard is from the libs on the other side who are protecting crime-committing illegal aliens is that, hey, it's not local government's business or state government's business to enforce federal law. That's up to the ICE guys. That's not up to us. We shouldn't be using our resources to even share information with the feds as long as it touches on illegal immigration. But here's the mistake I think Shad made, is he tried to bootstrap this into his disagreement with sheriffs who say, we're never going to support red flag laws. Now, I'm not a guy who believes that individual elected officials at any level in the state should be saying, I'm just going to simply ignore the will of either the legislators or the voters when there are laws on the books, because I've decided unto myself that they're unconstitutional. Now, there are cases progressing through courts that deal with this thing right now. And if it turns out to be unconstitutional, all of these sheriffs who've said, I'm never going to enforce the red flag law, they're going to look like superheroes. But until that time, I do not believe it is the purview of any elected official to simply decide for themselves, I just think it's unconstitutional and I simply refuse to enforce it. I agree with that part of it. But this idea that we're going to name the sheriffs and we're not going to take it, do you know what they're referring to here? You remember down in El Paso County, the great sheriff Bill Elder was down there when Club Q happened. And even though they grabbed up all of his guns, this is the mass murderer who's now been sentenced to eternity in prison and is awaiting the Fed's decision about whether or not to try to stick a needle in his arm. And they should. They grabbed up all of his guns. They never gave them back. He was operating under two different orders, I think bond and some sort of a protection order that would have prevented him from legally obtaining guns. He then, as we know from District Attorney Michael Allen from the 4th Judicial District, went ahead and obtained those weapons outside of the normal legal structure in a way that Red Flag wouldn't have ever applied. This is what the Dems are pissed about. He should have. That Bill Elder, sheriff said he's not going to get there. He should have gotten it. And it would have made zero difference, but he should have pursued it. And that's what we're hearing from the Dems. It's not the discretionary application of authority that is given to district attorneys or sheriffs. It's the we want you mandated to have to go out there and try to seek these protection orders. And that's junk, folks. And so that's why we had the law expanded to include teachers. That's right. Teachers are now authorized to go seek red flag protection orders against their students. There's no, by the way, date or time on that. They apparently, if they get pissed off at a former student, they might be able to go seek that. And we've also armed Attorney General Phil Weiser with the authority to seek red flag protection orders also against other Coloradans. Because, he's a first line responder. He has a badge. I've seen it on social media. Dude is a member of law enforcement. He's equipped to know these things. DAs too, right? Like the DAs are in a position to know because they get the cases long after they've been investigated in about 99% of the cases. Anyway, that's what's going on with the Dems. They decry through the AP and then through these social media retweets and postings, they decry an organization that informs sheriffs that they shouldn't enforce federal law. But the hypocrisy is that is exactly what the Dems want to do to sheriffs when it comes to things like illegal immigration. You see that? Like, with illegal immigrants, even those that commit crimes, well, we got to protect them from these sheriffs. It's not your business to try to help out immigration. But when it comes to every other thing under the sun, man, we expect the sheriffs to do it. And if they won't, we're going to expand the authority to people who really have no business making these decisions. It's just very, very interesting, the times that we're in. And frankly, if Shad's out there or somebody tells him, listen to the podcast or whatever, dude, I'd love to have this debate with you on air. And it will always be respectful, but there will be hard questions. I imagine you'll have some for me. I'd love to answer them and I'll have some for you, but let's start the conversation, man. Just because you're the head of a different party than I'm a member of doesn't mean that we shouldn't have debates for the betterment of the listening audience. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we advance some policy thing that we can somewhat agree on. I don't know the answer to that. Our number 303-696-1971. I need to tell you about another guy who's never afraid to debate. His name is Dan Caplis. He and his partner, Babar Wahid, they have debates like this all the time. They're not always in court, by the way. Once they find that righteous case and they don't go out there looking for it, you go out there looking for them. If you're the victim of someone through their negligence, their recklessness, their intentional conduct in some cases, you give Dan a call at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551. And this is a guy who will start the debate. And it begins with the insurance company, the trucking company. By the way, they can't stand Dan because he continues to take their money and give it to the victims of their conduct or their insured's conduct. He'll start the debate with them. If that debate doesn't look like it's going to result in justice for you, that's okay. They can now take the debate to a jury in a courtroom in the state of Colorado or at the federal level, and he'll go get justice for you in that way. Guy's got a proven track record over decades. Hell, Bobber's been doing it for 16 or 17 years now. They've got records, and I don't even know if we keep these records. They feel like records. 5 back-to-back $1 million plus verdicts. Biggest outcome against a trucking company ever in the history of the state of Colorado. It just keeps happening, and it's not luck, folks. It's skill, it's commitment. Give Dan a call, 303-770-5551, or you can check him out at Dan Caplis Law. That's Caplis, C-A-P-L-I-S, DanCaplislaw.com. When we come back, final thoughts. I'll go through the text. You can even give us a call, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710, KNUS.
Imagine the lifelong impact of a journey to the Holy Land, surrounded by like-minded travelers. Picture yourself stepping foot in iconic locations right out of history. With nationally syndicated radio hosts Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher, you'll gain firsthand understanding of the spiritual and political importance of this vital region.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher here. I hope you'll join Dennis Prager and me on an amazing journey through Israel in October 2023.
Discover Israel's vibrant culture and why this nation is such a strategic partner for the United States. Join Dennis Prager and Mike Gallagher on this life-enriching Israel tour, October 25th through November 3rd, 2023. For more information, call 855-565-5519 or visit standwithisraeltour.com.
George Brauchler back with you here for the final segment of the George Show for Tuesday, 7:10 KNUS. Tomorrow, I will be broadcasting LIVE from a place called Lexington, Kentucky. I'll be addressing some prosecutors there in the afternoon, and then I will fly into the late evening hours to get myself back here so that I can be live and local with Billy right through the glass looking at each other in the aftermath of the first presidential debate for the 2024 election cycle for the GOP. You know that Fox News is hosting that thing. We'll have plenty of sound, I think, from that. Interesting. You remember on Friday, we had a conversation about should Trump debate? Should he go to this first debate? And there was a real split there by some folks. But I didn't hear anybody say he shouldn't debate ever. Usually the folks that were saying, hey, he doesn't need to debate this first time was, let's let the field thin a bit. Let's do a couple debates, see who the front runners are going to be, and then Don should show up and do his thing. Now, I think that that's risky. I totally get why he would be advised to do that, but this isn't a guy who takes advice. This is a guy who gives advice. But this happened. You may have heard about this. This came out on Truth Social. That's the president's media platform, and I believe this was 8:20 or 8. Here it is, 8:20. At 3:40 p.m. That's just a couple days ago. This is from Donald J. Trump. I will read it to you in its entirety. New CBS poll just out has me leading the field by, quote, legendary, end quote, numbers. Trump, all caps, 62%, 46 a point above DeSanctimonious. He's really going to hammer him with DeSanctimonious. He wants that to stick. Who is crashing like an ailing bird. Ramaswamy, 7%, Pence 5%, Scott 3%, Haley 2%, Sloppy Chris Christie 2%, Ida Hutchinson, and that he puts Ida, AIDA, in quotes, 1%. The public knows who I am and what a successful presidency I had with energy independence, strong borders and military, biggest ever, all caps, tax and regulation cuts, no inflation, strongest economy in history, and much more. All caps, I will therefore not be doing the debates. Despite the grammatical syntax issue there, it should have been therefore I will not be doing the debates. Nonetheless, I will therefore not be doing the debates. That's news, folks. This is a guy who isn't saying I'm just skipping the first one or the second one. This is a guy who's made it clear I won't be debating at all. That is extremely interesting. There's a poll out, and we're going to get into more of the deep dive on this thing tomorrow because it's a CBS poll that came out, CBS News poll. And again, take polls for what they're worth, man. They're wrong too. They were wrong in 2016. They could be wrong again. But the president quoted that poll. And in that poll, he's right. It says, likely GOP primary voters, who would you vote for today? 62% said Trump. That's brutal, man. That's like 2-1 compared to the rest of the field combined. But he's not going to be there. That's interesting. And I think we're going to start to see those numbers shift is my best guess. I don't know how much it takes away from the 62%, but I think you're going to see some folks rise who the public doesn't know. Maybe it's Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm not really sure. But the same poll talks about how much people want the president to debate. 73% of GOP voters say he should participate in the first primary debate. So it's interesting. 73% is a big number. It's bigger than 62. And the guy trumpets the 62%, but then says, I'm not going to debate. That's very, very interesting. I think it's risky. It's not dispositive. I still think that Trump's the front runner to win the nomination. I don't know about the general. We'll see about that. But he's the front runner to win the nomination. Absolutely. But I think it's a mistake here because these people who scramble to try to get any airtime at all in the light of all of these massive indictments and all the gnashing of teeth and ripping of clothes over could President Trump be president again, all that stuff, they can't get any airtime. Well, now they can. Free of his influence. Now, I get it. He's done his Tucker Carlson interview. It's kind of a who cares moment. And I'm not even sure, I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure why anyone would pay attention to that. We all know the president. We know what kind of presidency he had. He's right about all that. Why are we listening to him pick Tucker Carlson to have a one-on-one interview with rather than see him test his skills and his points against a field that wants to dethrone him as the front runner? I don't know. I told Billy off air, I'm not even convinced I'll talk about the Tucker Carlson interview. Like, who cares? Like, unchecked, untested. I don't know. Is it relevant? We'll find out. But tomorrow we're going to get into the rest of this stuff leading up to the big, big debates that are going to take place on Fox News, the very first one. We'll get to the other current event stuff of the day. Thanks to Billy. Thanks to Dave Migoya. Thanks to Chris OMG Murray. We'll be back tomorrow. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.